Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 904 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as a huge Russian defeat happens in Kursk and Belgorod, and they're declaring a state of emergency, and there's also mass surrenders. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, as we have gotten massive news over the past 24 hours that Ukrainian forces have continued to advance in the Kursk Oblast, in the area around Glishkovo, and also in the direction around the town of Korenovo, where we were able to hear the Ukrainian forces have been able to advance in this direction as well. We have also been able to confirm that the Ukrainians have been able to take control of western Korenovo, and we also get to see that a major Russian surrender of over 100 Russian soldiers occurred today near the border town of Sverdlikovo just a few hours ago. It's one of the biggest single surrenders of the entire campaign so far from the Russian side. At the exact same time, we are starting to see that slightly more resistance is being made by Russian naval infantry of the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade near to the direction of Lyubomovka, as we are starting to report some Ukrainian losses in this area. However, at the exact same time, it seems as though some Russian units have also abandoned tanks and vehicles in this area, which are being captured by Ukraine as well. We were also able to report more action within the direction of Giri, and major news as the Ukrainians have broken through Kolotolovka and are now advancing deeper into the Kursk Oblast as we speak. We have been able to get information today confirming that the Ukrainians have made it about 3 or 4 miles inside of the Belgorod Oblast, and once again showing that a brand new offensive front has been created within Belgorod, and the Ukrainians are now on the advance within Belgorod and Kursk at the same time. We also got major news of the Belarusians threatening the Ukrainians with nuclear warfare, apparently once again affirming that they actually have nuclear weapons given to them by Russia under their direct control, and that if the Ukrainians ever try and conduct any sort of incursion or invasion into Belarus, they will fire off nukes instantly, no questions asked. They then apparently found out that the nukes didn't work, or they didn't have permission to use them, because literally just about 20 minutes after that statement was made, the Belarusians came out pleading for all sides to come together and create a long-lasting peace. We also got to hear really big news out in the area of Irkutsk as well, as we got to see one of Russia's most advanced strategic bombers, a Tupolev 22 M3, end up crashing today due to a major mechanical failure. Some sort of an engine explosion or a fire over the town of Irkutsk led to the crew forcing themselves to eject out of the aircraft, and the Tu-22 M3 spiraled to the ground right outside of the city of Irkutsk and exploded in pretty impressive fashion. It was pretty wild to see, and we have loads of video, picture, and evidence of that. At the exact same time, we also got to hear within the areas of Ukraine, the Russians are trying to attempt advances at Chasiv Yar, Kupiansk, Avdiivka, and also around Robotny, and it appears that the attacks at Chasiv Yar, Kupiansk, and Robotny are largely being repelled. However, there are minor gains being made by the Russian Federation's armed forces around the area of Pokrovsk at this moment, although the Ukrainians are inflicting very high casualties onto all attacking Russian forces on all fronts. We have absolutely massive amounts of news tonight, and this is just covering in that short little segment right there the biggest pieces of news that we have tonight, and there is still loads more that we have to cover. Of course, really quickly to lay this out for everyone before we get into the news, don't be expecting Enforcer Matt to chip in too much tonight. He is still actually a little bit rough and under the weather, but he is getting a little bit better with each and every day. But usually when nighttime comes around, he does end up getting a little bit worse, so he probably won't be butting in too much on the stream tonight, but he will be around during the question segments and also the polls if we have any polls tonight. But moving on,
isn't it funny how just around work time, like the sickness comes back? Like, it's kind of funny. I start feeling like crap right around stream time every single day. It's like, it's kind of ironic.
Dude, I would have to say that's how I used to feel when I worked at Publix. So yeah, I'd be like, damn, I'm feeling terrible. But anyways, moving on from that, isn't it a coincidence, folks? But anyways, I'm just kidding about that. Matthew actually is feeling a lot worse right now. But anyways, moving on from that and into the Kursk Oblast, we have gotten some very significant news today. And we're going to start off the Kursk Oblast today with a bang on the highest note that we can, near to the town of Sverdlikovo. Sverdlikovo is another town that's been under Ukrainian control for actually quite some time within the area. The Ukrainians have been well beyond Sverdlikovo ever since the third day of the Kursk offensive and have made it all the way up into the area around Korenovo. In fact, they're in western Korenovo at the moment, and they also have moved from the area of Snegost and down to the village of Vizhnapol, or Vnezapno. I'm so sorry, everyone. We're going to call that Vnez. We're just going to call that village that because I will not be able to pronounce it any other way. But the Ukrainians have captured Snegost in Vnez, and they're continuing to advance further towards Glishkovo. Sverdlikovo is a really good ways behind the Ukrainian lines. But interestingly enough, many of y'all will be reminded of a statement that was actually made by someone in the Akhmat unit, the commander of the Akhmat forces that were inside of Kursk at the time. He said, hell, I mean, our guys are still on the border. We haven't even seen the Ukrainians, the cowards. We just can't even find them. A lot of people, including myself, took that as a ridiculous and stupid statement when we heard it, because that would be like saying a giant meteor hit the planet and you didn't see it, and therefore you weren't even hurt by it. That was about the same equivalent that the Akhmat commander said in that statement. But crazily enough, it actually turned out being true. There was just an entire Russian company that was at Sverdlikovo in some massive bunker complex right here on the Russian-Ukrainian border that just stayed there. They didn't even know that the invasion had happened until the Ukrainians had literally overrun them, and then they got stuck there, and they've been stuck inside of a massive bunker complex in this area for about a week at this point, with no help, no support. They are so far behind the Ukrainian lines at this point, there's no way for them to conduct an effective breakout and survive it to make it back to Russian-controlled territory, so they ended up surrendering today. 105 Russian soldiers were inside of this dugout, and they all ended up surrendering today. We can actually see a couple of clips of the video here of the Russians laying out. You can actually see the specific part of the tree line south of Sverdlikovo where these Russians surrendered. From what we can tell, it was actually around this area right here. Once again, that doesn't seem to largely line up. Hang on, hold up. I gotta go try and find this thing. So, is it this one? Is it this one? No, well, I be dipped. It's right around Sverdlikovo. Why in the hell can I not find this now? Because, once again, I found this before stream, and then I try and find it again, and then I can't. Wait a minute. There we go. This is it. This is the tree line right here, because you can see the little break in the area and everything like that. The exact same. So this is actually where this bunker was, or at least where they ended up capturing all of these Russians. We then got to see a drone view of all 105 of these Russians laid out on this road, waiting to be processed after they have surrendered. But these guys were in a small bunker complex. You can actually see well, I say small in a second, y'all are going to see that's not really true, but they were in this little bunker complex right here, and you will see that you actually do not see this bunker on Google Maps. Apparently, Google Maps satellite photography is a little bit out of whack because they do not have an up-to-date satellite picture of this area, but this is the most up-to-date one we could find, and it does clearly show that a lot of earthworks were done to try and make some sort of a fortified position for the Russian forces that were going to be in this area. And the kind of fortification that these guys were in for about 4 to 5 days before they ended up surrendering to the Ukrainians was actually pretty shocking. We actually have a video of a Ukrainian soldier that went into this compound not long after the surrender and looked around, and it was huge. I mean, it was absolutely massive. So here's the footage. And I want to remind everyone, this is all built underground, by the way. This is absolutely a pretty impressive amount of work that the Russians put into this thing to then get overrun and then surrender pretty much immediately. You see him showing us the inside. They have electricity, they have plumbing in this thing. I mean, it's actually pretty shocking for a Russian defensive fortification. We're assuming the only reason this is so nice is because it was in Kursk, not in an active combat zone, and there was no rush to build it.
This guy's cursing up like a sailor, too.
Yeah, he's like, damn, look at this. he's blown away. Hang on, folks. I'm hearing a lot of people saying that there's apparently...
Also, unfortunately, we are having lag, by the way.
Yeah, I was about to say
lag, like 10-second long lag.
Yeah, long-lasting lag, real lag. And so we're going to hopefully be waiting for that to pass over. So sorry, everyone. We've been getting hit with some of the illest DDoS attacks that have ever been seen recently over the past few days. Very sorry for that. So everyone, please remain patient. We're going to hopefully see that this eventually is overcome, because I know it's nothing wrong with our computers.
Also,
go ahead.
Also, unfortunately, just a quick heads up as well. Something just flashed across my screen. I'm not sure what it was. I couldn't tell if that was a command prompt or what. So be ready to nuke me from the call if anything odd starts happening.
Okay, all right, sure. But anyways, moving on from that, just text me if something weird happens, because it's going to be like a game of guesswork to know if something weird happens, so just text me that if it happens. But anyways, moving on from that, hopefully the lag is over at this point. You see them wandering around through the bunker complex a little bit more. It's actually a very extensive, fairly complex one. It's one of the most complex we've ever seen the Russians produce. And while it is Russian, I do have to say it's actually very high quality for the level of construction of these kind of fortifications. And we see they've put a Z on one of the doors, but that's the end of the clip. And this was the massive subterranean bunker complex that they had built in this area that was housing this entire company of Russian soldiers that was just sitting on the border doing nothing, and then they got overrun. And what's the most shocking thing about this is that if we look at this tree line right here, the Ukrainians, when they passed through this town and captured it, if they went all the way to the southern end of the town, they were roughly about a kilometer away from this bunker, from where it was sitting on the border. And if we were to talk about the closest that the Ukrainians probably ever got, they were, once again, just about a kilometer away from this bunker complex, meaning that if the Russians wanted to, there was a possibility that they could have tried to fire on the Ukrainians, although in reality, the effective distance of a rifle is about 400 yards, so to show you all that, that would be about 400 meters, so that would actually be about this far away. It's not that far in reality. Usually rifle fire is fairly long distance when you talk about it in an actual physical perspective, but when you're talking about it from the distance of this bunker to Sverdlovskovo, it's actually a pretty considerable distance away. But still, these Russians ended up getting overrun in their position and just ended up having to surrender. It's one of the largest instances of a Russian surrender seen so far in the entirety of the war. And I gotta say, that is some pretty impressive stuff right there, and very nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to capture these guys and make sure to put them into the prisoner of war exchange fund, because that is starting to grow at a rapid pace, a pace that we can't even keep up with on this channel. But moving on from that and down into the area around Glishkovo, we also got to see more damage to the Glishkovo bridge, which is a very important thing to speak on at the moment. And here is another clip as they pass over the bridge at Glishkovo. We can see the damage from the other day. That was actually filmed heading from Glishkovo north. This footage is actually being filmed heading into Glishkovo southbound on the bridge. And we can see now not only is there damage to the side of the bridge, there are now two large impact craters within the center of the bridge.
They double tapped it?
It looks like they're trying to knock it out with some consistent fire, kind of like how they did the Kherson bridge after a while, how the Ukrainians eventually knocked that bridge out with sustained artillery fire, and then later on they started knocking out the pontoon bridge as well. It looks like the Ukrainians are trying to do something similar with the Glishkovo bridge at the moment.
Interesting. Looks like they're taking it out pretty good then.
Yeah, it looks like they're really starting to work on it.
Возможно, это Хаймерс.
And you see the river below down there.
Big hole in the bridge, bleed.
And that's the end of the clip. But still, once again, like I was saying, it's quite obvious what Ukraine is doing. They are blowing up the only crossing over the Reka Sem River that is actually usable for the Russian armed forces, cutting off all the Russians south of the bridge from reinforcements and supply, pretty much abandoning them from the rest of the main Russian force further north at Rilisk, and forcing them either to surrender or fight until the bitter end. Either way, the Ukrainians, once this bridge is destroyed, will practically control the entire area south of Reka Sem, and will be able to exert a large amount of control over the area until it's opposed by the Russians later on, which would take a large amount of logistical abilities and efforts to be able to try and accomplish or achieve, at least within any meaningful time frame. So we are starting to consider this area all the way from Snegost and Vnez and all the way over to Tekhino partially controlled by the Ukrainians at this point, not because they're physically in the area, but because it's quite obvious they're going to end up controlling this area before too long. We also got to see that the Ukrainians were once again conducting airstrikes on the town of Tekhino, oddly enough on the exact same tall industrial building to the western side of the city, near to the river. We're going to be muting the gem music there, but we can see the airstrikes coming in and hitting this building again. We don't know what's in this building, but they have continuously conducted sustained airstrikes and barrages on this specific complex within the city. We believe it has some sort of military significance at this point as a defensive structure, and they're trying to destroy it before the small offensive forces that Ukraine has in this area begin to roll over. But we can see here that it is sustaining a good bit of damage from these Ukrainian airstrikes.
It must be something important to be wasting that much ordnance on it, so it's got to be for good use.
It has to be. And then we can see some kind of a weird intro-outro thing here, and it flips to the next clip, which is once again showing us another strike on the same compound in Tekkino again. And we see another strike happening once again towards the center of town, very similar to the strikes that we saw several days ago, actually. It's almost the exact same spots. And we just don't know what's exactly in these spots. We're assuming military targets, obviously, but what exactly those military targets are, we don't really know. It could be maybe motor pool areas. It maybe could just be a major defensive structure that the Ukrainians know will pose a large challenge if they advance into Tekkino, but it still appears that they're trying to knock that out and destroy it before they have to make it into this area. Meanwhile, moving on from that and all the way up into the area where the Ukrainians currently are at in this direction, we have been able to get confirmation today, the confirmation that we've been looking for on this channel, that the Ukrainians are inside of Korenovo. Korenovo is halfway in between Sudzha and Rilisk, and is one of the larger cities within the area. It's actually pretty similarly sized to Sudzha itself and all of the surrounding villages down here. In fact, I would argue that this is the largest settlement so far that the Ukrainians have ended up capturing and controlling at this moment. To give you all a little bit of an idea of what Kornevo looks like, I'm going to drop you all down on the one solitary picture that has ever been taken on Google Maps of this town. We can see the golden pelican of fortune and fame, and we can also see everyone's been blurred out.
That's the most random thing ever. Why did they put a golden pelican in the middle like that? Like, what's the reason behind it?
Man, I have no idea, but that thing do be spitting, man. Like, that thing be spitting.
For sure.
But let's see, what else is there? There's a building behind us that is doing a contortionist trick on the right side of the building. And largely a lot of pixels in the surrounding areas. A lot of stuff was blurred out, weirdly enough. Like, everyone's faces and everything else. Really bizarre, but that's a little bit of a look at Korenovo for everyone, in case y'all are curious what the town looks like. But you don't have to worry too much anymore, because the Ukrainians are in western Korenovo, and that was confirmed today with this Ukrainian Special Forces officer standing right in front of a post office box that is inside of the town of western Korenovo. And so we are able to...
And look at that kit, by the way. Like, look at that rifle, man. That scope is really nice. That's an AR, by the way, of some sort, like a 16-inch barrel. That's pretty nice.
Whoa. Look at that boiler. Whoa.
Man, they've got some good kit out here. They're using that nice American stuff, if you know what I mean.
Man, I mean, that rifle might be an American marshmallow, but oh, look at that boiler. Like, that is actually a pretty impressive rifle there. Really nice kit. I like it a lot. It's really clean looking. Of course, the Special Forces... It could be a Daniel. It could possibly be, but it is impressive looking. Very nice to see, but once again confirming the Ukrainians are in western Korenovo. And that probably means that the Russians are going to be pulling out of eastern Korenovo, because if the Ukrainians are in the west side of Korenovo, that probably means that the Russians' route of retreat is probably getting blocked off at this point, and so we'll expect that a withdrawal or a retreat will be occurring very soon. Also, Matthew was just telling me that Discord's having a bit of a delay. He's like, please bear with me. And I'm trying, man. It is so hard. It is so freaking hard. Because, like, I'll say something.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It sounds like I'm talking. Yeah, it sounds like I'm talking over you, but I'm trying to, like, talk at the same time you end, and there's a huge delay, so I'm not trying to, like, overtalk you or anything.
Oh, no offense taken. I want that man's name and number. That's like its license plate. I'm just kidding. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see that more Russian prisoners did end up getting taken around the area of Korenovo today. Actually, Correction, everyone. This is actually from Sverdlikovo, so that is actually a duplicate clip. Sorry about that. There are some prisoners who were taken in this area, but that clip was wrongly put towards the Korenovo area. We did get to see, however, in the area around the village of Zuravli, which is apparently still under some light form of Russian control. The Ukrainians did end up destroying a large amount of Russian vehicles in this area with some precision strikes. We can see right here a BTR-82 getting slammed by Ukrainian fire and knocked out. We can see another Ural getting destroyed and knocked out there. We can also see an MT-12 or a Mista B getting destroyed by Ukrainian fire, but once again showing that the small Russian elements that are in Zuravli at the moment appear to have come under some significant fire and they have sustained some losses. We were able to confirm, thanks to this footage and information, that the Russians have set up defensive positions just south of Zuravli. This means that the Ukrainians have to be everywhere south of Zuravli. So let me take you all to this area. So here's Zuravli right here. From what we're assuming, the Ukrainians have taken over Korenovo and also Olgovka as well, because these are the next settlements just south of Zuravli. And that would mean that the Russians would be setting up these direct fire guns and also setting up infantry in the tree lines like they were with that BTR-82 in a defensive position, because the Ukrainians are closing in on Zuravli at this moment. And finally closing in the area in between the Relist finger and the Lagov finger of this offensive, and largely creating one big blob, at least in this area, from what we can confirm on picture and video evidence. And that wasn't the only success story that was had, at least within this western area of the offensive today. Things have actually been going incredibly well over here, as we were able to hear that Ukrainian forces, at least according to a Ukrainian Ministry of Defense report, were able to take the town of Safanovka. Safanovka is a few miles west of Kromskie Bykie, and it is one of the towns that would pose a little bit of a defensive issue because it is close to a couple of lakes, which doesn't really seem like that big of a thing, but if the Ukrainians were to try and advance past this area later, the Russians could try and use the lakes to create some natural choke points on the Ukrainian forces, and so capturing Safanovka on the left flank of Kromskie Bykie is a fairly important move, at least at this moment. And we were able to see that there was some kind of a monument or a structure here that was apparently notable. This very
long-lasting lag. Man, this is terrible. I don't know what's causing it. Is it like the heat or something, or what? Because this is unusual.
Well, you know, isn't it always kind of like one of those odd coincidences, Matthew, that things heat up a little bit on YouTube with us and other groups, and then this always starts happening right after that? Isn't that always just the most bizarre thing? Because that's really
It's a
what
little
it is.
ironic.
Yeah, it's always a little bit interesting how that always happens, but that's fine. That's a-okay, because it's still, nevertheless, we are still covering the news and we're still here. Put an LSA in the chat if you are happy that we're still here. But in a second, I'll try and fix this and do some magic if I can to see if this is fixable. But anyways, getting on into our next clip and also explaining a little bit of what I said, the Ukrainians were able to advance towards the area of Safanovka. And considering that they were able to capture the town of Safanovka, we were also able to see some very interesting video footage in this area. They captured an intact operational T-90M that was left behind by the Russian forces that had moved into this area. And we can see the clip right here.
Т-90, блядь. Ага. От, сука, підерки, блядь.
And the T-90M is Russia's most advanced tank, isn't it?
It is the most advanced tank they have on the battlefield.
Interesting. I bet we would like to have one of those to examine it.
Oh, we already do. We got one of those like way back in 2023.
Man, we'll take another one.
Man,
another one.
Man, I want one T-90M and one more T-90M. But we also got to see a couple of pictures of it as well. We can see a picture of it right here. We can see like a very ad hoc kind of a cope cage that was built on top of it. It almost looks like a coffee table, like a glass-topped coffee table. And then moving on into our last picture, we also got to see the inside of the turret of the T-90M as well. And this is the commander's side of the turret. We can see the commander's cupola right up there with all the periscopes installed into the cupola. And another interesting thing we got to see is this plushie that was left behind in the tank when it was abandoned. Apparently, these Russians, much like I was saying earlier today, have a decent amount of personality, but not a lot of bravery. In fact, they really have none of that because they left the tank behind in running order. It hadn't even sustained any hits or damage. It was just abandoned because they didn't have the will to fight. But moving on from that little bit of news and towards Kromskie Bykie itself, we did get to see the 225th Battalion in this area, and apparently Max Pro right there as this tank goes rolling along. We can see them side of the building and throwing it to the ground. And apparently we have no data again. Apparently we are flatlining another time, so give me a moment, everyone. We're going to be right back here in a second. Alright, hopefully this has fixed it. I'm not really sure if it has or it hasn't, but I'm hoping that it does. I'm so sorry, everyone, for the lag. Please bear with us. It is largely, from what we can understand, it's most likely either the heat that's getting to the internet. Alabama internet sucks like that. I know a lot of people are going to be saying, what do you mean? It's Alabama internet, it's going to suck. Or it's a DDoS attack, one or the other. It's most likely a DDoS attack, considering things that have gone on in the background. Fairly normal occurrence on this channel, but hey, it is what it is. But moving on from that and back into the clip, we can see the T-90 moving on along. We see it passing a Max Pro. We see them throwing a flag off the side of the building. Oh, we see him shooting the Russian flag. Dang. Taking some prisoners.
Escalation here.
Man, I'm telling you what, and your microphone just keeps cutting in and out. I love it. And we can see more prisoners being taken. And we see them taking some trophies from the Akhmat unit, and that's the end of the clip. But great to see the 225th Battalion of the 176th Territorial Defense Brigade once again moving forward, taking new ground, and doing, of course, amazing and incredible things. But still, let me check and make sure that our stream is connected and running fine, and it does appear that it is connected and running fine. A little bit slower, but actually it's starting to pick up now. So it looks like we're back to normal, hopefully. I'm hoping that we are. Let me know if y'all can actually hear everything that we're saying and seeing here on the stream, because I would like to know. We would like to know that it is a good, solid connection. Of course, it might change here in the very near future, but a huge apology for y'all. It's as aggravating for us as it is for y'all when we go through something like a DDoS attack or some kind of a bad internet night. We try and deal with it the best we can here on this channel. A lot of people are going to be saying, why don't you just make your internet better? It would be great if we could. We can't connect Ethernet because the actual router is way too far away from where we are. We can't really do anything like get another internet provider because there's currently a monopoly running this area. We can't get the internet infrastructure improved because it's Alabama. What can you do? So it's kind of a little bit of a rough thing that we have to end up dealing with. So hopefully everyone's hearing this fine, everyone's doing fine, so that way we can keep on running this show and keep on covering the news. Because, of course, the DDoS attacks are getting to people, and it looks as though some people are starting to decide to leave. A fairly reasonable response to what we're having to deal with right now. But please make sure to stick with us, because it's not anything that we're doing. It's something that someone else is 100% doing to the channel, and we end up having to try and work with it the best we can. And hopefully those people don't end up winning over on the channel, because this is what they end up doing whenever they get pissed off. But with that, moving on from that little bit of news up at Kromskie Bykie, we were able to see that before we move on into the center finger of the offensive near to the area of Kursk, apparently the Russians are getting a lot of attention from a specific group that has a lot of experience around the Kursk battlefield. They've actually been there before. They've been there and done that, much like State Farm says. And apparently they are starting to analyze the Ukrainian battle actions that are being taken within the area of Kursk and trying to get a lot out of it. And we were able to see that those people are none other than the Germans. And oh boy, no. Howdy, do they look like they're having fun.
Oh my goodness, man. I tell you what, when I saw this earlier today, I was looking at it thinking, this is a interesting picture. It's good to see the Germans are analyzing the situation, but at the same time, it gives me PTSD, like flashbacks almost, like seeing them at the board like this. I don't know if it does anyone else, but man, it's giving me some flashbacks. Ooh.
Man, I'm telling you, it kind of does. Like, I don't know if I'm getting this correct, folks, so correct me if I'm wrong, but this uniform looks as though it would be a part of the German Luftwaffe, and this one is a part of the Heer, which is the German Army. That's what I'm understanding. You know what? Let me go pull up the Luftwaffe dress uniform. And hopefully it doesn't pull up the World War. It, of course, pulls up the World War II one. I'm talking about the modern Luftwaffe. You know what? Let me just type in German Air Force. German Air Force. It's still called the Luftwaffe. German Air Force uniform. It still pulls up the Nazi uniforms. You've got to be kidding me. Like they know that they're like, World War II is over, right? On like Google Images, like we're looking for, oh, here we go. Yeah, Matthew, this is, look at this. That is the modern German Luftwaffe uniform.
Interesting. And also, by the way, I want to make it clear, I'm joking, by the way. I'm not trying to offend the Germans out there. It's just a little bit of a funny joke. But you got to admit, though, it is an interesting picture, considering Kursk is an area that World War II was kind of fought around. You can see here, the Germans looking at this right here, and kind of, also there's another picture of the guy kind of wide-eyed as well when he's looking at this. So I don't know, man. It's interesting to see.
I gotta say, it's very interesting to see this kind of a thing, because I don't know about y'all, but the fact that these Germans in these uniforms, now I'm not saying that these uniforms are like incredibly Nazi-ish. Actually, funnily enough, they are actually modeled off of American Class A uniforms a lot, because that's how West Germany did their uniforms post-war. East Germany was the one who largely kept the uniforms almost identical. But beyond that, it is very interesting to see them gathered around and talking about a battle action around the city of Kursk. You know, it's you gotta see the irony in this thing. You know, regardless whether people, you know, say, oh, you know, they'll like don't make fun of the German army, and I wouldn't make fun of the German army. It's a pretty good armed force and it's a part of the Western world, but still, it's really interesting to see this kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like, it just gives you flashbacks of times of yore. You know what I mean? Like, you know, when these guys, or at least their country in a sense, not these guys in particular, but at least the country that they're still in, was there about 80 years ago, almost at this exact same year, funnily enough. It's just kind of coincidental. That's all I'm trying to say. But anyways, still,
As you can see, the Ukrainians are trying to take some more territory to trade for land exchange.
dude, some guy is going to roll in there in a second, in a wheelchair like Dr. Strangelove, and he's gonna be like, the Ukrainians are taking more land. It's gonna be like, oh, wait a minute. It's like, who the hell's this guy? But anyways, moving on from that and out of the area, it's now time for us to move on back into Kursk and get past a quick little joke on the Germans analyzing the Kursk offensive. The real Kursk offensive that's happening in the present day. But moving on from that and into the actual Kursk prong, if you can call it that, we were able to see that one Ukrainian prisoner of war ended up being taken today. Now, this is big news. I believe this is one of the first Ukrainian prisoners of war that has ever been taken on film. They literally covered the guy's head in like a burlap sack, and they put him in the back of a van. They kind of made a huge deal out of this as well. From all we can tell, he's in the back of a rotting Buhanka. But that
looks like a tough ride right there, like not exactly A-class coach.
It is not A-class coach by any means, but still, that is one of the first Ukrainian prisoners of war that we've ever been able to confirm has been captured by the Russians, and it's one of the few. From what we understand, only about 12 to 18 Ukrainian soldiers have been taken prisoner over the course of this entire offensive, compared to about 2,250 Russian prisoners of war that have been taken over the offensive. So I'm sure a lot of y'all are starting to see the picture unfolding where the prisoner of war exchange is going to be very lopsided towards the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians will be able to get all of their guys back. The Russians will still have a long way to go of getting any of their guys back at all. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we did get to see that the Russian 810th Naval Infantry Brigade, which is still in this area, did end up capturing a Humvee as well, apparently abandoning the convoy that was largely destroyed yesterday in this area. They were able to capture one of these. We always love to hear Satan in the ranks of the Russian army getting to laud over capturing something. You know, I always love to hear, oh, look, I captured another, you know, something like that. It's like, okay, interesting. But still, it does seem
also kind of funny. It's also kind of funny that they got a Humvee, which is like a, you know, pretty common piece of equipment for the West, and we got their most modern tank, and Ukraine took it and, you know, gave one to us. Kind of a, not exactly a fair trade, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. And moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we also got to see that unfortunately one of the M1132 Stryker engineering vehicles did end up getting damaged in this area as well. It is starting to seem that according to our picture and video evidence that we're able to get, the Russians are starting to inflict a larger amount of damage on Ukrainian forces on this specific offensive front, and it looks as though this front area is going to be slowed or stopped at least at this moment. It seems that the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade seems to be the only unit trying to hold down this area at the moment, so if the Ukrainians did dedicate a larger amount of brigades into this area, they probably would be able to overwhelm and break through the Russian defenses that the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade are starting to set up along this area. But once again, I want to say this very clearly because I'm seeing some people saying that everything we're showing with that is fake. This channel runs off of picture and video evidence. If the Russians claimed this and then the picture came out and it looked like it was heavily photoshopped, we don't take that at face value. But these pictures are fairly straightforward. The videos are fairly straightforward. These do appear to be Ukrainian losses. Either in abandoned vehicles or destroyed vehicles like that engineering vehicle, and it does seem as though, at least according to our battle analysis, this area is starting to slow in as far as its offensive abilities. We are pro-Ukrainian and pro-Western, really pro-Western and pro-American through and through, but our battle analysis in this area is going to be as unbiased as it possibly can be, because we want to try and give the most realistic picture of the successes that Ukrainian offensive can have, instead of just telling people that it's going to be fantastic and the Ukrainians are going to be in Kursk by tomorrow. We want to really give y'all an actual realistic picture of what different areas of this offensive are looking like at the moment, so that way people aren't hearing nothing, everything great and everything terrible. It's a much more realistic approach and a realistic analysis of what we're seeing at the moment. And from what we can tell, this area around Lyubomovka in this direction is the only one where there really is any kind of heavier resistance. From what we understand, the picture around Kromskie Bykie is still the same today as it was yesterday. Russian forces seem to be largely disorganized in this area. They don't seem to be affecting a good resistance. We can see the Russians are taking a pretty bad beating in this area. And also in the Korenovo direction, the Ukrainians are still making ground here as they are moving through Korenovo and are going to be moving beyond Korenovo here within the future. And at the same time, within the Logistical direction, they're also making really good advances in this area today as well. And so largely, from what we can tell, the Ukrainians everywhere but Lyubomovka are doing incredibly well. And moving on from that and down the line and into the area around Giri, we did also get to see some MRAP movements in this area as well, as they were moving through this direction. We can see this is actually a BMP-1 passing by a couple of Max Pros.
What is that, a transit van out here in the middle of the battlefield? I was making a little quick delivery.
A little sprinter van, yeah, like Amazon Prime or something like that. But we can see the BMP making its way around and back on the road as it continues on through Giri. And with that, that's the end of that clip. But moving on from that and into our next one, near Spalnoy, we also got to see more Russian prisoners of war being taken. Once again, Russian resistance in almost every area but Lyubomovka at the moment seems to be pretty sparse.
Егор, ну-ка расскажи, зачем тебе гандоны в твоем портмоне?
Ну, это бывшей девушки остались.
Бывшей девушки?
Да.
Так кто, твой боевой товарищ?
Нет, просто это когда приехали, было уже это.
This guy would make a great career as a mumble rapper because you go, hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
It's like, I respect this guy. He knows when to be quiet.
You can call him Lil Orc.
Little Orc. Dude, that would be great, man. What if they did call him that?
That'd be great. When he goes back to Ukraine, he can make that his rap name in the prisons.
Man, he's going to be sent there, man, in the prison of war camp, man. He's going to be telling, I tell him out the coop, out the light, tell him F12, F-SWAT, and then the Ukrainian guy comes in, hey, sit down! And then he sits down and shuts up instantly.
Кружку там штовхала, не?
Нет, нет.
Она. Точно?
Точно нет.
Кто твоя бывшая?
Well, anyways, it's nice to hear from one of the most quiet Russian prisoners of war we have ever seen, and it looks as though things are still going well in the Belarus district of the Kursk Oblast as the Ukrainians continue to make ground in this direction. We also got to see a pretty unique vehicle being moved in as well, a Bundeswehr M577. These are purpose-built very specialized vehicles. I'm going to show y'all one of these right here. And let me show y'all this. This is a democracy manifest. And I will have to get y'all the best picture I can of this vehicle. I am not going to compromise for anything less than the best. Here we go. This is the M577. This is a mobile command post, and what it is it's an M113 armored personnel carrier that was modified near to the rear of the vehicle to allow for more headspace inside the vehicle. You can actually stand up in the back of this thing, and you can run a very small command post out of the back of it, helping to organize forces on the front and hopefully streamline the burden that the commander carries in having to lead the troops on the field. This is a very important vehicle to move in, that the Ukrainians moved in, as we saw in the picture. This is once again showing us that they are trying to coordinate and make sure that their forces are as effective as possible, and a commander is able to be in a more clinical kind of an environment with this kind of a vehicle, and be able to order the troops around a lot more effectively and also communicate with them a lot more effectively as well. A very important vehicle to see in a battlefront. Like, I know many people are going to be like, well, this thing looks like crap, and it kind of is. It's really just made to be a mobile command post. There's nothing special about it beyond that. And also, Monstro Lab said, armor is how thick? It's not thick at all. You can shoot through this with a heavy machine gun. It's a very thin sheet of aluminum that this thing is made out of, but it's never going to be meant to be under fire. This thing is probably going to be several miles behind the lines, maybe behind several battalions, or maybe a brigade even, and they'll be issuing orders from inside of this vehicle to the battalions that are actually up there on the front. But still, a very important vehicle to have in a theater, in a campaign, and we're seeing that they are starting to move these in, like this picture showed. But moving on from that, and now moving on into some more interesting news rather than in this area, it's actually time for us to talk a little bit about what we're hearing in Kursk on the Russian side a little bit, because we didn't really get a lot of Russian-sided news today on what they're doing at the moment in regards to this offensive, but we do have at least a little bit that we're starting to hear that is giving us a better perspective on what is going on. And apparently there is still more lag going on, more lag, long-lasting lag, and I hate to hear that. It's very unfortunate, but still, beyond that, a lot of people are starting to see the Ukrainian advances that are occurring around the area of Logistical, Korenovo, and Kromskie Bykie today. It does appear that the Ukrainian forces are starting to move forward fairly quickly. We were able to get a confirmation from the Ukrainian Minister of Defense that they have been able to advance a significant amount and capture about another 6 to 8 settlements today, probably the settlements leading up to the area of Zuravli, if I can pronounce that correctly, and it does seem as though the Ukrainians are going to be having a decent amount of forward momentum. And this has led a lot of people to wonder, Russia has begun withdrawing troops from Ukraine to protect Kursk, and a lot of people are wondering, will this allow Ukraine to advance inside of Ukraine? They are making such big advances inside of Kursk at the moment, the Russians are clearly going to be moving more reinforcements to try and stop them. And this does that mean, while I stutter through that, I have a stammer because I'm trying to pay attention so much to how we're lagging, but beyond that, is Ukraine going to have more success? Yes, no, maybe. What are y'all thinking? And Matthew, what are you thinking as well? Take it away.
All right, so right now we're hearing that Russia is moving a lot of units away from combat on the front lines in Ukraine, and they're moving them back to protect Kursk. And the big question is, will this allow Ukraine to advance? 47% said yes, it will allow them to start advancing very fast, while 33% said maybe so, but slowly over time, and 7% said no, Ukraine won't make any new advances. And on this one, I'd have to be with the 33%. I think that they'll probably will make some advances here, but it's not going to be right off the bat, and it's also not going to be anything major right off the bat either. It will, of course, take time to do this and actually take more ground, but I'm confident that over time, the Ukrainians probably will do so, but I'm with the 33%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my honest opinion, I believe that the Ukrainians will probably advance in some limited areas inside of Ukraine. Right now, they're actually getting pushed back near Pokrovsk, and they're having a pretty tough pitched battle around Chasiv Yar, and also from what we've heard from the 110th Brigade, things aren't really improving in for their situation around Pokrovsk at the moment, because ammunition is actually being prioritized for the Kursk offensive over the defense of Pokrovsk at the moment by the Ukrainian High Command. So we may see that they advance in some areas, but that may not be a reflective picture of the entire front line inside of Ukraine. But I have a feeling that the Ukrainians will be able to eke out some advances in some places. Can't really say where for OPSEC reasons, because, you know, in case the Russians were watching the show and we're trying to get any ideas or anything that we may know, we're not going to be sharing that information at the moment, but they probably will be able to advance at least in some areas, at least in my opinion. And my opinion is all I can give. It is not a lot, it's not much, but it's honest work. And moving on from that, and that interesting question, it's now time for us to move into Kursk, because we did get to hear the news today that Russia is withdrawing troops from Ukraine, and they are moving them into Kursk. And we can see a picture right here of some of those Ukrainian soldiers that are in Kursk at the moment, and it is once again giving us the idea that the Russians are starting to consider this a serious situation, and strategic reserves are actually going to be depleted. Meanwhile, within the city of Kursk itself, we have been able to hear about something that is so important to the Russian Federation. It's the way that they keep their army alive. It's the way that they keep their nation running. It is the Russian railway corridors in the area. And this is the current information that we have at the moment about the Russian railway system in the area around Kursk. Remember, folks, the offensive is happening in the Sudza direction, which is down here where my mouse cursor is on the map. From what we can understand, the railway access to Kurchatov is open. I also want to give you all a little bit more of a clearer picture here. The information that has been gathered here letting us know the the status of these larger main lines and branch lines are being given to us by Belarusian railroad engineers who are traveling along the Russian railway corridors in this area and are getting different kinds of information on what rail corridors are open and which ones are closed. From what we can understand, almost all of the rail corridors in the Kursk region are closed. Only one of them is open from Oryol to Kurchatov. It may be open just for the reason of trying to supply and further support the Russian forces that are moving into this area. From what we understand, the Belgorod rail access has also been impacted or closed completely, meaning that there really is no rail supplies moving in and out of Belgorod at this moment, meaning that we can expect decreased combat efficiency from the Russian forces in the Vovchansk offensive in northern Kharkiv. We can also see that apparently the entire main line from Smolensk to Oryol has also been affected as well, and apparently maybe either having delayed railroad traffic or delayed schedules, or maybe allowing a reduced amount of traffic over the main line, meaning that less supplies are making it into Kursk at all, and absolutely no supplies at this moment are making it into Belgorod, as no viable rail line, at least from the area in the Kursk direction, is open and leading directly into Belgorod at this moment. So it does seem as though logistically things are going quite rough, as a matter of fact, within the area, and we can expect that the Russians will be dealing with decreased combat efficiency because of the closures of most of the branch lines and also a heavy impact on most of the main lines within this area as well. But still, once again showing us the Russians are in a pretty rough strait in this area, even supply-wise. But with that, we are now going to be moving on into something else that's a part of the Kursk offensive for the large part, or the Battle of Kursk, or the Battle of the Frontier, as we're kind of calling on this channel, that we haven't been able to talk about a lot. Many people remember that yesterday we were talking about a Ukrainian MRAP that ended up hitting a concrete barrier near to the area of the town of Kolotolovka, and that little concrete barrier was about right here at this little building. From what we know, the Ukrainians have actually as of yesterday, they had taken the town of Kolotolovka. And of course, we got the typical statements. Oh, you tell people not to assume shit, but you assume it. Oh, you know, all that stuff. But we assumed because that MRAP was driving at great speed, and it looked like it was trying to drive at great speed to avoid incoming fire, possibly from this tree line south of Kolotolovka, so that way you could make it into the town to the Ukrainian forces that were there and further reinforce and resupply them. And that's what actually was happening, as we did get information today that not only is Kolotolovka now clearly under control of the Ukrainian armed forces, the town of Vyasovo, which is just south of Kolotolovka, is also under control of the Ukrainian armed forces as well, as we were able to get picture evidence today, about 10 hours ago, of the Ukrainian forces moving through a building that was geolocated to be exactly inside of the center of the town of Vyasovo. So this is once again confirming the Ukrainians have made it several miles into the area, and the offensive into Belgorod is starting to pick up some momentum. We don't know how many forces are involved. We're still assuming a battalion, but they are starting to make a decent amount of ground. Actually, funnily enough, this is about the same amount of ground that the Ukrainians were requiring. I don't know why I'm stuttering so much now. I actually know why, but it's the same amount of ground that they required to make it up into Sudza. So still, Really interesting to see. Good to know that this offensive is going to start picking up some speed, and hopefully we'll see that the Ukrainians are able to capture a decent amount of ground in Belgorod as well, and maybe even link up with Ukrainian forces near to the area of Belaya, widening opening their front pretty much through the entirety of the border region in between the northern area of Belgorod and throughout largely half of the Kursk Oblast's border area with Ukraine as well. But moving on from this offensive news, we have also started to hear something fairly interesting as well. Apparently, Challenger 2s have been reported to be operating inside of the Kursk invasion. From what we understand, the Ukrainians have about 13 operational Challenger 2s at any given moment. Most of those are attached to the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, so if we were to take a very big assumption here, we would assume that the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade is also inside of the Kursk Oblast at this moment, according to these reports. And a lot of people are wondering, will the Russians retaliate against the British because British weaponry, like the Challenger 2, is being used inside of Russia? And a lot of people seem to be weighing in on this, and a lot of people also seem to not really have that much enthusiasm behind the idea that the Russians have any way to even retaliate against the United Kingdom. So Matthew, what are people saying, and what are you thinking as well?
All right, so now that we've seen proof that the British Challenger 2 is inside of the Kursk region and fighting against the Russian forces, and of course they do have the little tea brewer inside of there, so that makes it even doubly worse. The question is, will Russia retaliate against the UK? 57% said there's nothing that the Russians can do toward the UK, and 26% said Russia will ignore it completely, and 12% said Russia will retaliate against the UK. And in my opinion on this one, I'm really not sure what Russia could do to Britain at this point, unless they want to start World War III. Basically, all they can do is sit back and cope with this and realize that a very competent and very well-built tank that can outdo all their tanks is currently in their territory and wreaking havoc while the crew's drinking tea made from the tea brewer inside the tank. I can't really get over the tea brewer thing. Y'all can probably tell that right now, but I'm with the 57%. There's really not much Russia can do. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. There's not really much they can do, and if they were going to retaliate, they already would have retaliated against America, considering a lot of the equipment inside of this offensive is apparently American provided from what we can tell. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're now moving on out of the Kursk area, and we're moving all the way across Russia, deep into the Russian Federation, into the area around Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal is the deepest lake in the world. Many people are actually really fascinated by that, but it is unbelievably deep. Let me actually tell y'all how deep Lake Baikal is. And so, let's see. Lake Baikal is 5,387 feet deep at its deepest point. That is pretty crazy. That is pretty insane. Y'all want to see what that actually looks like on a graph? I'm sure y'all are very interested in this. And so, let me show y'all. So, here we go. This is all of the lakes compared to each other. This is the deepest that Lake Superior gets. This is the deepest that Lake Huron gets. This is the deepest that Lake Erie gets. Lake Erie is pretty shallow, but this is the deepest that Lake Ontario gets. This is the Atlantic Ocean out here. And then, this is the elevation that Lake Baikal is at compared to Lake Superior and the others, and that is how deep Lake Baikal is. 5,387 feet deep.
I wonder what lives down there at that depth. Like, that's where Putin's from at the bottom.
Man, you just hear this, man. If you go down there with a submarine, you hear, suka, bleh. You're like, oh, it's a Russian. Like, it's like, they live down here. Like, they sit there, man, like, the divers go down to the bottom of Lake Baikal, man. They're like, I'm down at 5,387 feet, and the pressure down here is immense. And one of the fish, like, swim by, and they go, oh, the cool Russians drink to death. And then the diver says, oh, the cool kids will say. Like, because the pressure is high on them down there. So, like, very susceptible to the pressure. You know, I have to explain that joke because some people, they don't get it. But beyond that, it is really a deep lake. But beyond it being a deep lake, about as deep in the hole as the Lee Spring Army is, which is actually a pretty big compliment. Lake Baikal also was home to another interesting thing that happened today. A Tu-22 M3 strategic bomber, which I'll pull up a picture for. We'll pull up a picture up so y'all can see it. So let me grab that really quickly and it pulled up the crash immediately. Hang on, folks. Let me go get y'all a good picture of this thing. And so here we go. Here's that thing. That's a Tu-22M3 in full color, in living color right there. That's what they look like. It's a larger strategic bomber of the Russian Federation. And from what we understand, one of them ended up running into a little bit of a problem. And also, I actually got to hear that someone here in America was apparently at one of the airports that this thing was at. And Matthew, I actually got a statement from him. I went to the airport in Russia, you know, and
I went to the airport down there, and when I went to the airport, I saw the plane on the runway.
Man, you do
I can still pull it off even while I'm sick.
Yeah, you actually don't sound that sick anymore, really. Like, I know you probably really are, but actually you don't
Man,
sound that
I'm putting on
bad.
the front right now. I'm trying my best to participate.
Man, I gotta say, though, huge shout out to you. But beyond that, moving on into our footage, here is... Aw, dang it, it went to one of the cooler ones. Anyways, this is the video of the Tu-22M3 actually hitting the ground and exploding. Y'all will see the video of it falling to the ground here in a moment.
О, сука. Я глушила.
Как раз волна нахуй, сюда. Никто рядом был там.
And they're pretty shocked by this whole thing.
Там же тачка, блядь, полетела.
Но.
Ебать, нифига взрыв.
Какие там если пожарные, да, там что-то такое.
Look at that lame cop car back there with the Z on the side of the window. It's like a soccer mom's minivan with some police lights on it.
That ain't no cop car, Matthew. That's just some random SUV with a Z on it.
Are you sure? I could have sworn I saw like blue lights in the back.
Yeah, on the license plate.
Oh man, they're faking. They ought to arrest him for that.
Dude.
This guy's like gonna burn the clutch out with that too.
Yeah, dude, it's like chaos in this video. But moving on from that, we also got to see. Hang on, I got to save that one for last. We got to see more pictures and videos of the Tu-22M3 crashing right here. We can actually see it falling out of the sky in this clip. Some people have been saying, was it shot down? No, it's so deep in Russia, there's no chance of this thing getting shot down. It was most likely some sort of an engine explosion or something along those lines.
Это что такое?
That thing going down like a giant comet, really.
Че, реально? Че, реально самолет падает?
Make a wish, bliat.
I wish for the Tu-22 to survive. Oh, it did not. Like,
Реально самолет упал, что ли?
here comes the sun. Do. Like, what an explosion right there.
Это что
man.
такое?
That's the end of that clip, but sounds like some kids are crying over spilled Tupolev. But anyways, we also get to see the burning fire on the ground right here as well. With a giant, beautiful watermark in the middle. Viewing is a pleasure on this video.
112 Ruski flies, bliat.
112 Tupolevs destroyed. Something to be proud of. Russia #1, blid. And we also got to see a duplicate backup video right here, just to have that, just in case we lost one. But anyways, moving on from that, we also got to see a Tu-22M3 exploding right here as well. And this one was really something. I gotta say, this one was absolutely amazing, and I gotta say, this was probably the best video we got. Now, I'm building this one up because I want everyone to get to their screens, like, even if you are not looking at the screen right now, I want y'all to pay attention to this one, because I'm sure y'all have never seen this many Darwin Award runner-ups in your life. They didn't get the Darwin Award, but they almost got it, and so, without further ado, I'm going to show y'all the clip right here, right now. It was right there. Like, they were right there.
Damn, that's crazy.
Like, there's some guy out there with an SUV in the field. Like, they literally went out there, man. They're like, I got it. Like, they're going to catch the freaking bomber or something.
Охуеть!
Охуеть, блин.
Ёбаный в рот!
But I want to show you.
Sound like a hobbit.
Man, why in the world did that guy sound more like a kid? He was like, Охуеть, блин, sugar. Like, it's like, what the hell? But anyways, let me show you that clip again.
Охуеть! Ёбаный в рот!
I can tell they were a little too close. I could tell they were too close when the explosion actually happened and it looked like a nuclear bomb went off. You know, that's when you know you're too close to the explosion of the falling plane that is several hundred tons, barreling down towards the ground at several hundred miles per hour. You know you're a little too close. When the flash is this bright, this looks like something from the Trinity test. No lie. Like, let's watch this again, one more time, just for posterity's sake.
Охуеть! Ёбаный в рот!
It's a classic. This is a classic right here. But nevertheless, the Tu-22 M3 crew was able to successfully eject from the aircraft, and so there were no casualties from the crash, at least from what we know yet. Another interesting thing to get out of this crash is that apparently it was caused by an engine explosion. One of the engines was just so poorly maintained, it ended up overheating and exploding inside the bomber, and so then that's what led to the catastrophic fire that led to the plane pretty much falling right out of the sky and then exploding on the ground. So it looks like they are starting to run into some problems even with their own bombers and trying to keep them running, because they really don't have a good way to keep them flying at this point. But moving on from that and out of the Irkutsk area, it's now time for us to move on into Moskva, because we got a little bit of news out of Lyubertsy in the south of Moskva, I believe. But before we move on into Moskva and cover all the news coming out of Moskva, we have to make sure to address some questions. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat segment here, our first super chat of the night is going to go to S. Bogey, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, S. Bogey, for that support. And also, let me check real quick. I believe that was their first ever super chat on the stream, but let me make sure about that before I say it. And it was their first ever super chat, and no comment to address, but they put in a super sticker of the YouTube pair riding a rocket out into oblivion and then exploding. Damn. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
Eternal flight, brothers. But still, huge shout out. Eternal flight pair. But beyond that, huge shout out to S. Boggy and helping this channel to keep on running. What you didn't throw in a comment, but the support means a lot. And I got to say that we are greatly appreciative and very thankful for the folks who enjoy this channel enough to support it and help it to keep on running. No one has to, and that's what makes it such a incredible and very kind thing of y'all to support the channel, because if it wasn't for folks who just took it upon themselves, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so a massive thanks to S. Bogey and each and every one of y'all who supported tonight once again, because y'all helped to make this channel possible on a daily basis, time and time again. If it wasn't for all of y'all who were helping this channel to keep on rolling, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a huge thanks to you once again.
Yes, indeed. And up next for our second super chat, we have a $50 donation from Charles Hazlitt, who's also a longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Charles, for that support as well. He said that thank you and keep up the great work, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Charles Hazlitt, and thank you for wanting us to keep up the great work. We try our hardest. I'm sure many people may have noticed I have ended up doing the past 2 short war summaries over the past 2 days because Matthew's been unwell, and so I have to do them all if we want any of them. And so the work has been a little bit more arduous for a little bit of a longer time than normal. But beyond that, I'm more than happy to do it. I love doing it. I know Matthew loves doing it, and he would love to be doing it if he wasn't feeling sick. But Matthew is sick. He is very sick.
Man, I love doing it anyway. Even when it's sick or not, I love doing it anyway. I'm just more quiet than usual because the little whirly-bird's got a hold of me, and sadly, it feels like it could be a long one, like maybe a week or so. But I'm going to be here every night, regardless of how I feel, because that's what we do for the LSA. We show up every night, and we've been here since the beginning, and I'm sure as hell taking a week off because of some whirly-bird. But Enforcer, take it away.
I have to just say that he's not taking a night off.
But beyond that, I got to say, huge thank you to you once again for the support, Charles Hazlitt, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat, but thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you for being around forever, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so from the live chat here, we have one from Brian Knight. He says, are the Ukrainians blowing up the rail bridges in Russia?
Are the Ukrainians blowing up the rail bridges in Russia? From what I know, not really. If they are, it's in incredibly limited numbers. We've never gotten any video or picture evidence confirming a bridge destroyed inside of Russia. Now, we have gotten video and picture evidence confirming signal boxes destroyed, catenaries destroyed, entire segments of the rail bed being destroyed on like flat level ground. We have gotten confirmation of that stuff in the past, but we haven't gotten a lot of confirmation of any kind of bridges being destroyed. Really, to be honest, a lot of the stuff that is news or what people are reporting as news these days on the Russian railroads is largely hyped up clickbait. Like I cannot say that enough. Like, people are saying that there's like these Wild West train hijinks that are going on where they're like stealing entire Russian trains and then they somehow just magically drive them into Ukraine with all this magical stuff on them, like Su-57s or an S-500 or something crazy like that. And then other people say that the Russian railroads, like the Russian trains, they just don't even run. You know, people are saying all kinds of weird stuff about it. The Russian railroads are in pretty rough shape for the most part. Like, some areas have fallen into complete chaos. Like, they don't even have running timetables anymore or anything like that, which is wildly concerning for the Russians at least. But from what we can tell, at least with what's going on around the area of the Kursk Oblast, and also really throughout most of Russia, there are no railway bridges being blown up. I'm stuttering so much tonight. I'm so sorry, everyone. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. A huge thanks once again for the support, Charles Hazlitt, in helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be returning right back into the news from Moscow.
I got to say, Enforcer, you're doing good because the lag tonight's been a huge distractor, so it's fine to stutter a little bit. And also, you're holding on to a lot more of the show than usual because I'm not punching in or saying as much as usual. So, good job. I say good job to the Enforcer. Give him a big round of applause in the chat, man. Yeah, give him a round of applause. But anyways, moving on here to our next super chat, we have a $50 donation from Gunfox61, who's also a longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for that support. He said, July 26, 1959, Santa Susana Field Laboratory had its first radiation release of 10 in total. And to take a question from the chat, and also today in history, India gains its independence from Britain, and a 1483 Sistine Chapel dedicated, and hopefully, Matt starts to feel better. And thank you. I hope I feel better soon, too. This is a terrible thing to have, but thank you.
And those are some pretty interesting historical facts to share with us, Gunfox61. Thank you greatly for supporting this channel and helping to keep on running and sharing some incredibly cool historical facts. You know, something interesting, folks, that a lot of people don't know is that when India became independent originally from the British actually created India as a single country. It included Pakistan. Pakistan actually declared its independence from India later on, and largely they still end up having a large amount of conflicts and skirmishes with each other over control of the Kashmir, which is a region in northern Pakistan and northern India and also northern China that all three claim at the exact same time. It is a really, really heated thing. And also, Pakistan and India also have nuclear weapons, which just adds more fun to the whole deal. Like, what fun could you have rather than fighting over an area where hardly anyone lives because it's so mountainous and it's arid, so there's no way to grow real crops, but damn it, we're all going to kill each other for it because that's what matters. Like, actually, it matters a lot, and I'm kind of under-exaggerating the importance of the Kashmir. The Kashmir is actually where pretty much all the major rivers in the Indian subcontinent originate from. All of their sources are within the Kashmir area, and so anyone who controls the Kashmir pretty much controls the supply of water for everyone else within the Indian subcontinent. So if the Chinese get it, they have a large amount of control over India and Pakistan. If Pakistan gets it, they have a large control over India. If India controls it, which they largely do right now, they have a large amount of control over Pakistan and their waterways. So kind of an interesting one, because this was one of those instances, because let me just put this out there. A lot of people have been saying that the British in particular, at least on a historical level, always carved up borders terribly. Like, for example, Iraq. Like, a lot of people always say, oh, what the hell were the British doing in Iraq? But the interesting thing is that with India, they just said, okay, y'all are independent, y'all can sort it out. And they didn't really define, like, any additional borders. You know, they didn't try and carve it up from for any cultural reasons or ethnic reasons or anything like that. And they still largely get blamed for it. It's like you know, it's kind of like if they actually carve up the borders then they get blamed. And if they don't carve out the borders and they just tell the folks that are in the Indian subcontinent, to figure it out and carve up their own borders, then they get blamed for that too. So it's kind of a damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of a thing with that sort of a situation, but still kind of an interesting one to talk about with this area. But still, a huge thanks to you once again for support, GunFox61. Pretty interesting, by the way, that India got its independence from the United Kingdom, and this is something that a lot of people also don't know as well. Britain just really gave India up. They're like, a lot of people say that Mahatma Gandhi was the guy who really got independence from India because, he did like this peaceful protest thing and he would like starve himself for the British to declare independence. Mahatma Gandhi's role in getting independence for India is actually a little bit overplayed because the idea of Britain getting rid of India and allowing it to become an independent country instead of a crown colony was being thrown around as early as 1915. In fact, it was actually seriously being considered by 1915. And a lot of people say, well, what about the Amritsar thing, which is the Amritsar massacre? That did occur years later. But at the same time, while that did happen, and it's an atrocity and everything, the British were still trying to get out of India by that point. Much like how they were trying to get out of Iraq and Jordan and also Israel about the same time that they got those at the end of World War II as well. They really had no intention of being inside of the Middle East permanently because those were mandates, meaning that they took control of those only for a short while so interim governments could be made so that way when they're released into independence, they would hopefully be stable countries, which the British actually did fairly okay at setting up some stable countries, at least to the start in the Middle East. I mean, they weren't really that bad off. But with India, on the other hand, it was a different story because they absolutely took no considerations of carving up different nations or anything like that within the area of the Indian subcontinent as a whole, and talking about the entire subcontinent. And so when they left, the ethnic tensions really in between the Pakistanis and the Indians immediately kicked off and it actually started off a war, which is where Pakistan ended up getting their independence from. So kind of an interesting story and history about that. But also really neat that India and Pakistan still hold over a large amount of British customs. Like, for example, in India, they actually observe British historical tea times that were laid out during the Victorian era and other things like that. Pretty interesting stuff. But anyways, with that, huge thanks to you once again, and we will make sure to get that live chat in your honor, GunFox61. And with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and also, folks, don't forget that if you have a live chat question for us, tag @EnforcerMatt in the chat and then put your question behind it, and I'll add it to our spreadsheet, because right now we have about 8 more, and I need some more live chats for that spreadsheet. But with that, we're jumping into this one, which goes to Nicholas Condor. He said, do you think that the recent derailments may be caused by sanctions preventing Russia from getting new railcar bogies?
I would say probably not. Railcar bogies are a somewhat more complicated kind of a thing to make, but Russia actually has a fairly substantive amount of locomotive works that could manufacture those kinds of bogies. Also, another interesting thing to speak about with the railroads, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, God. But anyways, let me go pull this up for y'all, because this is something interesting. Unlike cars, because cars are generally made at a certain width, track gauges are actually done completely differently in some areas of the world. Here in America, the common gauge is standard gauge, and this is largely the gauge of most of the world. Countries like the Koreas, China, Australia, a large amount of the former British colonies, like Egypt, also use standard gauge as well, and most of Europe does. But then some countries use completely different gauges. And a lot of those countries are actually in the former Soviet Union. They actually use what is called, I believe if I'm correct, let me see. Well, I'd be danged. It's broad gauge. It's not standard gauge, but which one? Well, I be dipped. Oh, here we go. This one, this is a 5-foot gauge, which is Russian gauge, which is a couple of inches wider than standard gauge. So if you want a locomotive or rolling stock that you can use in Russia, that isn't something that you buy foreign parts for. You actually buy domestic parts pretty much exclusively for that reason, because no other parts in the world are really made for Russian gauge. The only people who make Russian gauge railroad equipment are the Russians themselves and some of the former Soviet countries. Ukraine has actually been shifting over the years to standard gauge, actually, so that way they're more compatible with the rest of the European rail network. But they're still kind of working on that at the moment. So there is a large amount of the rail network that is still Russian gauge, but there's also a decent amount that is standard gauge as well. That's also something that a lot of people understate as well as far as logistics go. the West, well, Russia, if they were to invade Europe, actually would have to end up building their own rails to support their own logistics, because they would not be able to use standard gauge rails if all of the locomotives in the rail yards were transported elsewhere. They would either have to convert their existing locomotives to be standard gauge, or they would have to try and find a way to build Russian gauge tracks inside of the standard gauge rail layout, and then use those Russian gauge rails instead of the standard gauge rails. So I hope that kind of addresses that the best I can, at least at the moment, because it's not something that they're going to be getting foreign parts for. And Russia actually has a fairly large amount of their own domestic-made locomotives. And let me see if I can show y'all a couple of them, just to give y'all an idea of how different their railroad infrastructure is. So I'll be showing y'all mostly diesels, because that's probably like the quickest and easiest ones to find. And so let me see here if I can find y'all probably like the most famous design they have. Oh my goodness. Come on. Come on. Diesel electric locomotives. Maybe this is what we're looking for. Yeah. This is what we're looking for. Okay, so let me show y'all. Oh, yeah, here we go. It is the CME-3. This is probably one of the most common diesel locomotives that exists inside of the Russian Federation and also in Ukraine. It is god ugly. Like, I think these things are hideous. I don't like them at all. But these are a fairly common locomotive that you see in Russia. Once again, built to Russian gauge, which is 5 feet wide, not standard gauge, which is 4 feet 8.5 inches or something along those lines. So it's just slightly wider, slightly larger than their Western counterparts. But still, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can with that whole deal. And also, everyone's like, oh man, Enforcer likes trains. I do. I like trains, but I could go on and on like this about civil aviation as well, because it's also incredibly interesting on top of railroad infrastructure. I'm just a big fan of public transport and infrastructure as a whole. Like, I could go on and on about that stuff. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Big thanks to you once again, GunFox61, for sponsoring that live chat, and hopefully Matthew does feel better soon. But with that, it is time for us to get on into that news into Moskva, and specifically into Lyobartsi, where we got to see that a major fire broke out on a larger building within the area. This was actually a part of some kind of an agricultural institution, I believe, but the fire ended up burning about 20,000 square feet of space. And that thing do be cooking.
That's some very flammable agriculture right there.
Man, that and apparently there's some kind of a bandsaw working in the background too during that clip. But we also got to see the fire from another angle, from the actual street. This is the agricultural plant that was on fire. Agriculture, blade. More like a burn it, blade.
I wonder if there's a Ukrainian saboteur somewhere in this audience right here filming this. Like, hey, look, actually, whoever took the video, they uploaded it and showed it to Astra, it looks like. So they're probably like, good work, Blyat, good work.
Maybe so. I mean, that might be the case. And we can see the fire from another angle right here. Every day in Moscow, you're not treated to a fireworks show, you're just treated to a fire show, where another building catches on fire and burns to the ground. But moving on from that, we did get to see that apparently there was another fire that happened in Moscow. I didn't put it down on the map, it wasn't in the short war summary today either, but it does seem as though there was a rash of fires that broke out in the city of Moscow, possibly suggesting that there are some interesting folks up there, hard at work of a sort, perhaps. But beyond that, still very interesting to see. And moving on from that and into Belarus and into Minsk, we then got to hear an interesting statement from Lukashenko today. And Lukashenko was flexing those muscles. He threatened the use of nuclear weapons against Ukraine. And according to his direct quote, Belarus will use nuclear weapons if the enemy crosses the border of the Union State, Belarus and Russia. There will be no red lines. The answer will be instant. And that was a direct quote from Lukashenko today. 20 minutes later, they apparently tried to launch one of these, and it ended up poisoning everyone in the silo, because then he came out and immediately started begging for peace negotiations to be made, because he then said, let's sit down at the negotiating table and stop this fight. Neither Ukrainians, nor Russians, nor Belarusians need it. And so it's very interesting. He went from saying, I'm going to nuke him and kill him, to, please, let's stop, please. Like, it's like, well, something happened behind the scenes in like 30 minutes that made him go a complete 180.
He must be manic. He realized I shouldn't have said that about the nuke, so let's turn around and try to make peace, Bliat.
Dude, he's a manic, and he says there, oh man, I want them dead, and then next week, I just simply didn't know what to do, or something like that. It's like, oh buddy, oh man, fun times indeed. But anyways, we do get to hear some interesting statements about this, some very interesting, because Belarus did threaten to use nukes on any invasion of its borders, and a lot of people are wondering, why is Lukashenko saying this? And some are saying he just wants to distract for Putin. He's running interference. And some others are saying that he thinks Ukraine will invade Belarus. And some people are saying, he seems pretty random. And some others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking, and what are you thinking about it?
All right, so now that Lukashenko has randomly decided to threaten Ukraine with nuclear weapons for some unknown reason, really don't know why, so the question is, why is he saying that? Take a good guess. 53% said he just wants to distract for Putin, while 26% said he thinks that Ukraine will invade Belarus, and 15% said it seems pretty random to me. And on this one, if I had to take a good, educated stab at it, I would have to be with the 52%. I think that he is trying to distract for Putin, because right now, with Russia being invaded, that is quite an embarrassment. So I think Lukashenko is running static for Putin and trying to basically redirect attention over to Belarus to try to distract from the major embarrassments happening inside of Kursk right now. That's really the only, really sort of semi-logical answer I could come up with for this, because it was very random. He just came out of nowhere and said, we're going to nuke you if you cross the border. And then he said, okay, we'll have peace too if you want peace. It's like, dude, it's like, what the hell is all that about? But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
We want real peace, long-lasting peace. And it seems as though Lukashenko may be trying to run that interference. But to be honest with y'all, I just think Lukashenko is stupid, and he just says whatever comes to his mind immediately. And so that would be my general assumption at the moment, to be entirely honest with y'all. But moving on from that and out of Belarus, it's now time for us to move on down into Ukraine. We don't have a lot of video and picture evidence from the front lines in Ukraine, but we do have a couple, and they are fairly interesting. We did get to see a destroyed Russian BMP-3 with detached turret. Batteries not included. Oh, a little toasty up in there.
Называется передок. Где, блядь, люди умирают. Или инвалидами становятся.
And there's the turret.
От танка. Вот какие.
Toasted to pieces, and wonderfully so. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see some battle damage to a Challenger 2, possibly in the Kursk region. We got to see that apparently it was hit by an ATGM, or some kind of a APFSDS shell inside of Russia. It appears to have taken a pretty solid hit to the direct upper part of the hull. It did survive the hit. The turret in this area, the turret armor in this area is incredibly thick, and we can see the entry hole that was made, and we can also see that apparently the cupola did take some damage as well. We don't know if that's from the same hit that the cupola ended up taking damage from, but still pretty cool to see that the Challenger was able to survive the hit and make it out of there. Once again, the Challenger proving its mettle in the field of battle. Moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report as well. And sadly, no Bobcat skid steers.
Oh, damn, man. No Bobcats? That's like, damn, man. I'm sick too. Could they at least get one? It's like, come on, man. That could have been good medicine.
Man, it would have been a delicious medicine. But Matthew, I have even better medicine. This guy, he's back. You know, we've talked about this guy on Twitter before. Please stop. TikTok headlines don't win wars. And then the headline the headline he's talking about, Matthew, is this. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of August 15th, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. That is not a TikTok headline, like, at all. Like,
that's a Twitter caption.
Yeah, that's a Twitter caption. This man needs to learn a little bit. I think this man may have some learning deficiencies, perhaps, because that doesn't look at all like a TikTok headline to me. So anyways, moving on from that, we got to see that 1,220 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 24 APCs, 65 supply trucks, 8 main battle tanks, 47 artillery pieces, 50 drones, 3 MLRSs, 1 aircraft, 2 cruise missiles, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. It was a fairly good day for the Ukrainians. They did inflict some fairly high losses, but we did see that the Russians made some minor advances in the Pokrovsk front today. But moving on down into the Kursk area, or more so into Kupiansk, because sorry everyone, we did get to see some combat action of the 28th Brigade in this area. Oh wow, that audio. Oh, threesome! Whoa. Look at that boiler.
Ебашь левее! Левее хуярь!
You hear the firefight.
Nice trench.
Oh yeah, nice trench.
Ебашь по тому
high-tech
дереву,
trench. Top-notch.
которое на 11.
Long-lasting trench.
Дай пройду.
Real trench.
9 пидоров там.
See him whipping out the RPG. Now he's about to be popping off that shot.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
That's not a sound you want to hear in battle.
Oh, and there it goes. Exploding in the distance.
Подготавливайте гранаты на РПГ. Подавай гранаты на РПГ.
You now see him getting another RPG shell. Man, there's some heavy machine gun fire going on somewhere down this hill.
Man, these things are having some malfunctions, whatever these rockets are.
Yeah, they're having some tough times with these. Oh, there we go.
Давай хуярь очередями, ебать. На 11 часов ебашь, нахуй.
Now see him loading up another shot into the RPG-7. Interesting noises from the video there.
I think that's their version of a censorship bleep.
Maybe.
Принял, принял. Працюю по трубам. Скорректируйте. Не бачу нічого із-за дима. Стан! На 12, там где плиты светятся по трубам. Давай очередями короткими.
Oh, it's a machine gun. Ha.
And they're starting to lay down that heat.
Well, that machine gun started smoking after just a few rounds.
They haven't been oiling it. You need to put down some oil up in that thing. You need to get it nice and cool.
Давай ебашь, вот там куст,
Always put the lubricants on your weapon.
напротив санатория, туда еб...
Aw, man.
Oh, jeez.
Цинкуйте, сейчас будут работать по переправе FPV-шками, будут выбегать и башьте. И один дежурит, один сидит там. А PV-шки чьи? Да наши будут по переправе работать.
And we now see the Ukrainians moving around from a drone view.
Один 300-й, от напротив Kursk.
Oh, and now they got out the, I can't tell if that's an M60 or an M249. Probably a M60? I'm not really sure. I would assume an M249, though. So I'm now seeing him whipping out the RPG-29, I believe. Popping off some shots.
I like for every one rocket that he sends off 2 F-bombs with it at least.
Yeah. And also thinking everyone is an M240. I was getting the designation wrong.
Доброе утро, нахуй.
But he sounds like he's having fun. And that's the end of the clip. But, of course, really nice to see. And we hope he keeps it up. Moving on from that and down the line towards the area of Soledar, we also got to see some night strikes being conducted by the 5th Brigade. These are like night terrors for the Russians. Very scary. But we can see them here sitting on the side of the road. The bomblets fall, and the bomblets get them. 3 200s. Sleep well. We see them dropping more bomblets.
Uh-oh. Oh.
Oh. Oh. Get him.
I think, oh. 200.
200. Ooh, my.
Was that points or something?
No, that's the number that they give to killed. Wounded get a 300. And that's a 300 right there. You had to ask, man. You had to ask. Let me see another Russian getting hit. That is a 200 right there. Unfortunate.
So they give more points for wounded and less points for, KIA. That's kind of interesting.
I suppose. 200 and a 300 right there. Oh my goodness. And boop. And here goes another one. Trying to get the truck down there, I believe. Boop. Yeah, right near the truck.
That one guy's Usain bolting it up out of there. He's running.
Oh, 200s. Oh my goodness. 400 points right there. And we see Usain Bolt right here. He's traveling along, but it appears they're going to be setting the finish line for that guy right there. Uh-oh. It looks like that's a... Oh. Oh.
Oh, damn, he's fighting with a tree.
And I think he's no longer fighting. There was another drone right there, too. Dang, that's an additional 200 points. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but it appears that the 5th Brigade was doing some hard work at night with the drones. Moving on from that and down in the Avdiivka area, we were able to see that a Mista S was destroyed today by an FPV drone. Check this out. There's the Mista S. We see them running away from the Mista S as it slams into the side of the turret, and we now see the aftermath of the Mista S. It was completely blown to pieces, and we see another one getting hit there, and another one. These are hits. We can confirm that. And that's the end of that clip. Really cool to see. Good to know that they're getting them. But I do want to make a quick little mention that the Pokrovsk front isn't going all too well. Things are a little bit rough in this area. The Russians are making advances slowly every single day, a little bit closer and closer towards Pokrovsk each time. To remind y'all where this battle began, it began down in Avdiivka from the area of the slag heap up here north of the city and on the very outskirts of the city right here. The battle then moved from there into the defensive line from Stepove and Berdichi down to the area of Vodane. The Ukrainians got pushed back from there, and then they set up a defensive line at Otratine, and then Novopokrovsk, Umanske, and Netailove. They got pushed back from there, and now it appears that the Ukrainians are trying to set up a defensive line around the city of Pokrovsk itself because the battle is moving on in that direction. It's not going incredibly well in this area, but we hope that the Ukrainians will be able to stabilize their defenses soon and stop the advance from continuing on any further towards the city of Pokrovsk. But moving on from that and out of this area and down towards the area of Verbove, we also got to see a destroyed MTLB Dani.
Підари не робили. Наші хлопці відпрацювали по красоті.
Is this Walter's World?
Але вони, сука, тут теж підкидали груз.
5 tips you don't want to do when you go to Russia. Number 1, don't get hit by the FPV drones.
He really does look like Walter's World, though.
Тут впав. Трохи така ямка, да? Для розуміння. Ну нічого.
Dude, Walter's World, though, he's a real one, man. I respect his channel. He has been on the grind for years, and he shares a lot of good tips, too. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see an AMX-10 RC of the 37th Separate Marine Brigade firing in the area at the Russians as well. It looks like they're still trying to use the AMX-10 as an MBT. I guess there is just no learning to be had there. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the area of that AMX-10 doing what it's doing, we're now going to be moving on out of the area of Ukraine and quickly down into Israel. As we were able to see that the Iron Dome did shoot down some more rockets that were fired near the area of the port of, or the town of Dimona, I believe. Here's the clip showing the interception of the incoming rockets from southern Lebanon. And we can see the interceptions happening in the sky right above them. Not as impressive in the daylight as it is at night, but it is what it is. The Israeli citizens were still protected, and that is good. And so with that, we're now moving on from that bit of news in northern Israel, and now we're heading into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 904 of the war. And so without further ado,
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці,
if it will stop and it will work with me. And so without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Щойно провів ставку. Була доповідь головкома Сирського, фронт, наші основні напрямки захисту, Торецьк, Покровський та інші. Найбільше там російських штурмів зараз, максимум оборони нашої уваги. Пріоритетне постачання саме туди. Всього, що зараз необхідно. Окремо головком доповів щодо операції в Курській області, є нове просування, є нове поповнення нашого обмінного фонду. Також генерал Сирський доповів про завершення звільнення міста Суджа від російських військових. І там зараз створюється українська військова комендатура. Звільнені також іще кілька населених пунктів, загалом вже більше ніж 80. Я дякую кожному нашому воїну, який все це забезпечує. Молодці. Також сьогодні на ставці була представлена стратегія щодо повернення наших людей з російського полону. Багато делікатних деталей того, що стосується формування списків, того, що стосується роботи з партнерами. Я доручив ГУР, МВС, Службі безпеки України, ЗСУ представити суспільству деталі, які необхідно знати нашим людям щодо того, як повертаємо полонених. Також я доручив залучити до цієї роботи громадські організації рідних українських військових та цивільних, які зараз в полоні. Таке посилення довіри, воно потрібно. Все буде представлено на брифінгу, і також зараз вже в серпні потрібне посилення деяких правових позицій нашої держави. Настав час ухвалити важливі законодавчі речі, оборонний законодавчий пакет для України. І це рішення, які допоможуть і українським воїнам, і всьому українському суспільству, і нашим державним інституціям. Перше. Ми маємо чітко гарантувати саме на законодавчому рівні, що наші воїни, які беруть участь в Курській операції, наприклад, та братимуть участь в усіх інших наших діях на території держави-агресора, будуть отримувати абсолютно всі виплати та преференції, які передбачені для передової. Це треба зробити саме законом, щоб у всіх наших людей була впевненість, що держава спрацює так, як потрібно. Друге, кожен воїн, який захищає українську державу, захищає наших людей, захищає нашу незалежність, заслуговує на визнання та максимальну підтримку. Це стосується, зокрема, тих наших воїнів, українських легіонерів, які наразі мають громадянство інших держав, але поки що не України. Вони заслуговують бути нашими громадянами України і мають отримати таку шану від української держави. Також це справедливо поширити і на їх рідних наших героїв. Третє рішення. Має бути врегульовано питання трофейної зброї, яку наші воїни здобувають в боях. Ми маємо це владнати. Ще одне, про що варто зазначити саме зараз. Кожен, хто служить Путіну або виправдовує його війну, чи допомагає злу, не заслуговує зберігати все те, чим його чи її відзначала українська держава. Зрадники, які втекли в Росію після 24 лютого, колаборанти, які працюють на війну, всі злочинці, які пішли на службу російській державі, вони мають бути позбавлені будь-яких звань та нагород в Україні. І це має бути зроблено реально. Так, щоб рішення про позбавлення нагород не було лише декларативним. а дійсно фіксувало, як Україна ставиться до такої особи. Відповідні законопроекти теж вже є в парламенті. І я прошу Верховну Раду України зібратись для розгляду цих питань невідкладно у найближчий час. Звичайно, окрім цих названих мною рішень, є ще деякі інші, не менш важливі законодавчі ініціативи, які посилюють нашу незалежність, зокрема духовну незалежність, а також урядова робота, щоб їх впровадити. Це все варто зробити дійсно оперативно. Слава Україні!
And
And Hiram Slava. And also respect to Zelensky as well, because it sounds like he's sick as well. It sounds like a cold or something. So respect. I really respect that when people show up when they're sick. I tell you what, it takes a lot of effort. And also to make a speech that long while he's sick as well, to concentrate. I couldn't tell if he was reading off a script or not. That's also pretty respectable, I got to say.
I gotta agree. Really respectable. Really respectable. But with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 904 of the war, and that is moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And I gotta say, one hell of a stream it has been again. I've been absolutely blown away lately with how these streams have been doing. It honestly seems like we have entered a new stratosphere or a new level of YouTube. I don't really know how to explain it, because tonight, once again, before the lag hit and a lot of viewers left, we actually reached a peak of 13.5 thousand live viewers here, which is actually the same as last night, which was also a very big stream. I gotta say that we are entirely humbled and so appreciative that so many people find this channel to be the place they want to hear news from. I say this little speech a lot these days, but I really do mean it a lot, and I always want people to be able to try and hear it, because, you know, everyone may not hear it when I say it at the end of a stream every night, but we are entirely grateful for all of y'all being here. We don't know why y'all picked this channel to watch. It's the most watched live stream that covers Ukraine war news daily on the internet. It's actually usually in the top 100, usually in the top 50 most viewed live streams in America by the live stream top view, well, the live viewer number, and usually it's insane. Like, it really is insane. There's no other thing to add to that. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going with this, because to be honest with y'all, the lag has distracted me so much, it's really hard for me to try and keep a coherent, independent thought tonight, because I'm focusing on looking down at the internet bar and everything else in the corner, trying to see if there's any kind of lag going on. So big sorry for the stuttering and everything that's going on, and sometimes me kind of sounding like I'm rambling, trying to get back to saying something that actually means something, because I actually am when I'm doing that.
It's all good. It's been actually pretty coherent tonight. I think it's all in your head, because rather than the occasional stutter or two, like, it's been running pretty smoothly like normal tonight. So I think it's just the chaos of it all is like building up in your head, but it's been going pretty smooth.
Oh man, I'm telling you. But beyond that, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that, Matty. But beyond that, I got to say a huge thanks to all of y'all once again for watching so far tonight. We still got a lot to go, so make sure to stick around. We got a whole bunch of fun stuff to talk about and speak about, but I really do appreciate all of y'all being here. It's a huge thing to me. It's a huge thing to Matthew. It's a huge thing to both of us. We put so much passion and effort and time into this thing. We haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. But, you know, we haven't taken a vacation a good half a year before this channel even started running, and then we certainly didn't take a vacation while the stream's been running. We've simply never had the time, and it's something that we were more than willing to sacrifice, being able to get free time or off days, because we haven't had an off day doing this the entire time that we've been running this thing. You know, we take Mondays off from streaming, but usually there's always something else going on. We usually have videos, or that's the one day we're using to catch up on everything else that we had to do as a part of our daily lives behind the scenes over the course of a whole week. We put our entire soul into this thing for 2.5 years. We've been watching it all day, every hour that's been happening. And it means so much to us that the stream is finally starting to climb out into the open, really. It's almost becoming a mainstream in and of itself, this channel, and what we're doing and what we're covering and the kind of time and effort we put into this thing and the kind of consistency that we have that really isn't seen anywhere else in the category. I've got to thank all of y'all so much for being here. I got to thank y'all all so much for just enjoying this channel tonight. 90,000 people have been here watching the stream as of right now. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy to us, because just to give y'all a little bit of an idea, 2 months ago, we would have never seen 90,000 views on a stream even after it had been up for a few days, and people had been watching it after it became a video. We wouldn't have even seen 90,000 views then, and now we get 90,000 views while we're live. I'm just blown away. I'm extremely grateful and very thankful and appreciative that so many people are seeing our work and really appreciating it and wanting to see this news nightly. It means a lot to us because we put so much work and effort into this thing every single night. And so with that, I hope I did address that incredibly well. Big thanks to y'all once again. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the final segment of the night, which is the question segment. We're going to be answering one of our poll questions first that we threw out to all of y'all, and then we're going to be answering all of the super chats, and then after that, we're going to be answering as many live chats as we can. And so, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so moving into the final question segment of the night, we have that one poll to address, and we'll get to our super chats and then our live chat questions. So, the current poll says, Iran still says they have quote-unquote ordered the destruction of Israel, yet no attacks have still happened even to this day, and what are your thoughts? 30% said Iran will never attack right now, while 27% said it's due to U.S. interference that they're not attacking, and another 27% said Iran will attack soon. And on this one right here, I'll be honest, I expected Iran to attack probably actually a week or two ago, and it still hasn't happened. So I would probably have to be with the 27%. It's probably due to U.S. interference because we simply have so many assets in the region. I think that's really starting to affect the way the Iranians are moving forward in this whole attack situation. So I think they might be holding off to see what the U.S. is actually going to commit to doing to help Israel before they launch their attack. But I think the bigger question here is, how long are the proxies going to hold off from attacking Israel until they finally decide to go ahead without the Iranian support behind them? Because I think they are going to get restless. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would say Iran is probably going to maybe not attack. I wouldn't say that they're certainly not going to attack. But considering how much time has passed and considering that it doesn't really seem like the region is all out just going to blows anymore, we keep on hearing people hyping it up like that, but it doesn't really seem the case. I'm actually going to have to reverse some of the comments we've made in the past and say that it probably isn't going to happen at this point. I think the Iranians are getting kind of cold feet about responding to the Israelis, and so I'm not really sure if an actual full-scale attack is going to happen at this moment yet. So we'll have to wait and see what unfolds, but I'm starting to get a little bit onto the camp of it being an unlikely thing that they actually end up attacking Israel, because so much time has passed, they still haven't done it, and I'm expecting that they probably never will. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, and with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, if Iran does not attack, this will be one of the, I think, second or third times that they've committed to actually attacking Israel, and then they backed out of it. So if this is the case, I think Iran's starting to lose a lot of credibility when it comes to their threats, whatever credibility they had in the first place. Not carrying out threats, kind of like the U.S. has done, honestly, when we say we're going to retaliate against anyone who attacks our bases, and then we don't, that erodes all credibility and respect that a force has, because your word that you're going to do something should be your bond. So right now, Iran is sort of like pushing back their red lines a little bit, and also the U.S. is also doing the same thing. So it looks like maybe de-escalation is in the area. Hopefully, maybe they can try to come to some peace, but I'm pretty doubtful about that personally, because there's really never any peace in the Middle East. But with that, we're jumping into our first super chat here, and this one's going to go to Ted Marshall, and he puts in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Ted, for that very generous support. And he said, "Get well soon," to Enforcer Matt. And thank you very much, Ted. I'm very hesitant to say this. I don't want to jinx it. I'm feeling slightly better right now, but it's kind of coming in waves. Like, the feeling good comes in a wave, and then I feel terrible like a couple hours later. So hopefully this keeps up, but hopefully I didn't jinx it right there. But thank you very much for the very generous support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the massive support, Ted Marshall, and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you for wishing Matthew well. It means a lot to him. And also, I gotta thank you so much for massively supporting this channel, because that means a great deal to both of us. You're helping this channel to keep on running. You're helping to make it possible for us to do this as a job, and we appreciate that greatly. I got to thank you so much once again for the support. I got to thank you for always having been here. I've seen you a decent bit in the chat for an incredibly long time, Ted Marshall, and thank you so much once again for supporting this channel tonight and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now, so that way Matthew could be sick on air. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also to answer a live chat that I just saw, Silver Revless said, what happened to the new intro from last week? We had to end up removing that one and bringing back the old one for now because the new one that we made was actually copyrighted. Well, some of the elements of it were copyrighted. I checked beforehand to see if anyone was enforcing a copyright on any of that stuff, and it came back as a no. And then when we actually played it, then it came back as a yes. And well, actually, YouTube's Content ID came through and said, "Oh, wait a minute, now we're going to have a revenue share." And I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" I was like, "We're not running ads. I'm not going to let them run ads." So I was like, we're going to have to pull that intro, although it took me 6 hours to make it, and then we're going to have to go and just start back with the old one again. So that's what happened to that one. Right now, I'm working on a new intro at the moment behind the scenes. It's going to actually have a real orchestra making our own Armed Forces medley for this channel. And I also had an idea, also, by the way, just giving y'all a little bit of an update. It is not going to be with an orchestra and choir. It's just going to be an orchestra now, because finding a choir was way too difficult. Really, the honest answer is I never got an email back from any choir I reached out to. I reached out to like 5 of them. None of them emailed me back in about 3 or 4 days. And so I went, you know what, screw the choirs. We're not going to have a choir. We're just going to do the orchestra. So it's going to be an orchestrated Armed Forces medley. And then we're going to be putting that in the intro so that way we can have that style of intro but not get it copyrighted. And so we will actually have our own copyrighted version of an Armed Forces medley for this channel. And that means a great deal of things. That means that we don't have to worry about a copyright for at least a whole 4 minutes and 30 seconds of the intro. We also can start to publish that out there. Like, we were planning on doing something where folks could buy a digital copy of it, or a digital copy of it, and then like a physical poster along with it, so that way we could fund the production of the thing, you know, after it's made. And if we were able to break even on that, my plan was to start making a whole load of orchestral covers of different kinds of music that we could use in our intro, and it would 100% be copyright free. That was something of a plan of mine. We'll see if that actually happens or not, but I think that would be incredibly cool. And also, Saxdu said orchestras will cost you a bomb. I actually found one that is fairly affordable. It's not garbage either. They actually ended up doing some soundtracks for some pretty famous movies that y'all would know, like Die Hard. They actually made the soundtrack for that movie. But they were actually fairly affordable. So we're going to be doing that. Still, I mean, when I say fairly affordable, I'm talking about like orchestras. They're not cheap as a thing, but still no expense, no, I guess you could say, quality will be sacrificed for the stream. Like, we will go to any length we can to make sure that the quality is as high as possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. A big shout out once again to Ted Marshall for the massive support and help with this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And our next super chat here is going to go to Duncan McIntosh. He puts in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, as well, for the very generous support. He said, I like trains too.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Duncan McIntosh. And thank you for saying that you like trains too. I don't know why some people have like this, like, abhorrence for trains. Like, they just hate trains. Hey. What?
Hey.
Well, I mean, you know, like, I don't get, because generally I don't hate any kind of transportation. Like, I think cars are pretty neat. I think planes and trains are pretty neat. I think ships are pretty neat too. I'm always interested in like all of the different forms of transport that there is, because I just find that stuff to be interesting. I always find it weird though when people like absolutely hate something, like, oh, I hate planes or I hate trains. I'm always like, oh, that's kind of weird, because, you know, I think some of them are pretty cool. Like, maybe, you know what? I was thinking of one of these. Maybe this is one that Matthew would find pretty cool. And so let me show this to you. This is a British Rail, and let me go get a good livery of it, so that way I'm not like giving you like a bad representation of this thing. So let me see here if I can get this for you and show it to you. This is an Intercity Class 91, which is an electric high-speed train in the UK.
Dear Lord. Is that a Ferrari logo on the front of it?
No, that is the British Intercity Swallow on the front of it.
Oh, man, if it had a Ferrari logo on the front, I was about to change the whole, like, the whole scheme of what was going on here. I was about to say, wait a minute, a freight train. Now, that might actually, like, stoke my attention a little bit, but no, this is looking pretty dumpy right here. They need to wash this one again.
Pretty dumpy? Dude, oh my lord, man. Then you need to see... I'm going to piss some people off with this. I know I will. But the Class 47 is probably, in my opinion, one of the worst looking locomotives I've ever seen. This is it.
Oh.
That's pretty rough.
That is rough.
It's like, I don't know what they were thinking when they made this thing. I have no clue. I would have no idea, to be entirely honest with y'all. I have always wondered why. Like, I just have no clue. But then the modern one, the Class 67, isn't really that good looking either.
Oh my god, man. What is this? It's like a corrugated metal abomination.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough. And then they have the Class 66, which I think they call the Shed, which is this one right there. I mean, that's literally just like that's a brick, you know, like it's like, that's kind of rough. But let's see, let me think of some American ones that would be pretty okay. The SD90 is pretty cool. This one right here, that one's pretty cool. I don't think anyone can hate that one. You know, doesn't look that bad.
Yeah, I like that one. That's the model I have, so I actually like that one out of all the trains.
And then there's the DDX 40. Dang, let me go pull this one up. Wait. The GTEL. Yes, there we go. This is what I'm looking for. This giant ass thing. The Union Pacific number 18, the GTELX, I believe is what it was called. It's the gas turbine electric locomotive, and this thing literally operated a massive jet engine in it, and that's how it moved. It was huge. These things are crazy cool, actually, like as a premise. But let me see here if I can find y'all a better picture of this thing. Also, whoa, look at that boiler. I don't know what this picture was meant to show. Like this.
Really, it's like some woman out there waving to the train going by. What was this, like an advertisement to like get train drivers or something?
I have no clue. I don't know. Like, I just saw that and I was like, what the hell? But dang, man, where in the world?
Man, it's like those psyops. You know how they'll show like the hot chicks or something in the military ads or something to get people to sign up. They're trying to do the same thing for the train drivers out here.
Man, dude, what if they really were? It'd be like, oh, that's weird. Wait, where's the American one? I need to find, because I want to find the actual one and get some pictures of this thing to show y'all. So Switzerland, the United States. So here we go. So hang on, it's got to be in here somewhere. The bunker. Oh, say okay. So here it is. Third generation. We're CC types. Why the hell does it not? Okay, so it is a GTEL. But I don't... Okay, wait, hang on. Here we go. Union Pacific GTELs. Here we go. Now we can actually get a picture of this thing. So this is one of them at a state railroad museum without the rear car because it required both cars to function. This thing ran on bunker C oil, Matthew, and the exhaust from the engine on this thing was vented upwards. And so they actually banned this thing from operating in Los Angeles and San Francisco because if it ever stopped at a signal under a bridge, the heat from the exhaust was so hot it would end up melting the bridge above it. No joke.
Wow, I don't know. That's really bad.
Yeah, pretty freaking bad as a design principle. So then these things got relegated, I think, to operating on the Cheyenne to Laramie. Well, not the Cheyenne to Laramie. I think it was like Cheyenne all the way to Salt Lake City or something like that. But it was the Sherman Hill route that they got relegated to for the large part. But these things had power, dude. Like these things were like souped up. Let me see if I can actually get you the amount of power that this thing had. Here we go. The power output. In the first and second generation, it had 4,500 horsepower. The third generation had 8,500 horsepower. This thing was a monster, like an absolute beast of a machine.
No, that's a lot of horsepower, man. I like that. If they could put that in a car, that'd be fantastic.
Dude, it would be, man. But also, one more thing before I move on. I want to see if I can find y'all this. It's probably on YouTube somewhere. One second. UPGTEL Fireball. I gotta find this really quickly. Can we find this? Will it really show this? I hope it does. Hang on. Maybe I need to type in startup. Maybe that'll get it. So hang on. I've got to show this to y'all though because y'all are going to be blown away when y'all see this. Okay. Is that it? Okay, that's probably a meme. I don't want to play that one because I don't know what the audio is on that. But when these things would start up, they actually would emit like this giant fire tornado out of the top. They are incredibly cool. Also, Pele Smith said, are these still in use? No. There's, out of the 55 of them that were made, 53 of them were scrapped, and there's only 2 of them now that exist, and both of them are museum pieces. So there are none of those anymore that exist or in use. And also, on top of that, they would have been decommissioned anyways due to environmental concerns because they use bunker C fuel, which is one of the most dirty running fuels that you can have out there, and due to regulatory requirements, things like that on emissions these days, they would have never been allowed to operate on a modern railroad. Like even the P-42s, which are a fairly common locomotive in the Amtrak fleet, or the GE Genesis as it's called. This one is in the 6th generation livery, which isn't really that bad, but I like the 5th generation the most. But anyways, beyond that, this thing generally is actually very low emission compared to most locomotives, but even this one now is starting to get a little bit into the high emissions category for new legislation that's been passed, and so that's why they brought around the Simmons Charger that is replacing all of the P-42s that are currently in service right now with Amtrak. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can with the whole locomotives thing. But there, I could go on and on and on about locomotives, but I could also go on and on and on about aircraft. And that's something that I haven't really been able to talk about a lot on this channel. But one aircraft that I like, and let me see if I can find it, is the Boeing. And I know many people are gonna be like, oh, it's like, it's okay. It's an older Boeing, back when they built them cool. The Boeing 717s. For some reason, I just really like these. I think they're cool.
Yeah, we've never gotten to fly on one of those. Those are connection jets, aren't they?
Yeah, kind of like jump jets, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they look fine. Like they're not exactly what you'd call like lookers or anything like that, but they look pretty neat. I like the 737 Max.
No, you don't. Yeah, I was about to type
Of course I like it. Of course you like it.
I don't like. Well, wait a minute. Or what?
Of course you like it.
or what, man? What's going to happen?
What do you mean, or what? It's like I worry about Boeing more than I do the Russians these days.
Man, I'm not going to lie, man. They are pretty scary. Also, the DC-8's pretty cool. Like, I really like the beginning of the jet era kind of jets. Like, I don't know if y'all ever seen this one. This one was really cool, and it's like one that pretty much disappeared. But it's the de Havilland Comet. It was the first commercial jet airliner ever put into service in the world. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, it looks pretty interesting. Definitely an old one for sure. What's the name of that airline on the side of it?
Let's see. BEA. I'm trying to think of that. British something Airlines. I forgot what it is. British European Airways. So a defunct airline for sure.
Interesting. Now, you know, a plane that actually looks pretty cool to me, and this is going to be the most mainstream answer ever for like a commercial jet,
Boeing
is the A380. Oh, no, the A380, the double-decker. That is the coolest one in existence. And obviously, that's like everyone's answer. Like, if you say, what's the coolest looking commercial jet? You'll probably say the A380. But I love this thing. Like, this Emirates one right here, I think has like a staircase in the middle of it where you can walk up to the second level and there's like a lounge and everything. So that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. But you know, I'm going to go with one that a lot of people from back in the day are going to hate. The DC-10 was a pretty cool aircraft, in my opinion. I know it had a terrible safety record. Or was that the MD-11 that I'm talking about?
I think it's the MD 80 or 90 or something like that.
I think it is, because I'm not sure which one had the problem with the decompressing, like, cargo doors, the cargo holds, that would explosively decompress and lead to crashes and stuff. I'm not sure if it was the DC-10 or the MD-11, but I really love the tri-engine, like, designs. Those were so cool, because one thing that y'all would find really interesting about this is the reason why these even existed at all, instead of having a 4-engine layout, was because back in the day, well, even still nowadays, although this has been massively changed, the aviation regulations in the United States actually required that if you wanted to conduct international flights, you could not, or specifically transatlantic or trans-Pacific flights, you could not operate an aircraft that only had 2 engines. It had to have more than 2 at a bare minimum. So that way, if one of the engines failed, it still has most of its thrust to be able to carry itself to an emergency airstrip to land at. And so the companies were posed with the dilemma of trying to figure out how to design an aircraft that would have more than 2 engines, but would still be economical enough that airline companies would want to buy it. And so a lot of companies ended up making 4-engine aircraft. So you had like the Boeing 707, the DC-8. You had those kind of aircraft that were 4-engine, like the de Havilland Comet. But then a whole bunch of companies figured out, wait a minute, what if we could figure out a way to make the airplanes more cost efficient, at least for their amount of gas consumption on a mile? if we were to reduce the number of engines from 4 to 3. But we were still over the 2-engine minimum requirement, where we could still allow these aircraft to be able to travel across the Atlantic or the Pacific. And so then the company started to design these tri-engine designs, and the DC-10 was probably the most common one. This didn't really catch on too much before the 70s, though, because a lot of companies were kind of of the concept, gas is cheap and very easily available. What the hell does it matter? I mean, a fourth engine won't hurt anyone. And then the 1970s oil crisis hit, and then everyone went, hey, those 3-engine models are actually really sweet because you get to save a little bit of gas. And so then they became really popular from the 70s to the 80s, and then most of them got phased out by the 90s. Nowadays, those laws have been changed enough that you can generally fly transatlantic and trans-Pacific flights with a 2-engined aircraft, and that's why aircraft like the Airbus A330 have become very common on international flights. It only has 2 engines, but still, according to modern-day regulations, you can fly these things over the Atlantic and the Pacific with 2 engines, and these engines have enough thrust that they would be able to carry this aircraft to an emergency landing area if one of the engines was to go into some sort of a failure in the middle of flight. So still really cool, like really cool stuff. Like, and also that's one thing that I want to make sure to clear up as a misconception, because a lot of people are getting the idea that I'm like a really big train person. I'm really a big transport person. Like anything that has to do with transportation, I'm really big into it. I love talking about it. There's all kinds of cool like regulations and history and stuff to it that is always fun to look into. But planes, trains, ships, cars, you name it, I'm interested in it. It's always interesting to me. But still, huge shout out once again to you, Duncan McIntosh, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And of course, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, before we get totally off the topic, I ran a quick poll to see which is your favorite commercial airliner from these options. Surprisingly, the Boeing 737 MAX got 17% of the vote. I was expecting that to be 0%. I was going to make a joke out of it, but for some reason, 17% of y'all voted for that. 42% said the Boeing 747 OG, the really cool-looking one, and 32% said Airbus A380, and 9% said Airbus A330. And on this one, I'd have to say the A380, like I said earlier, but I'm very shocked by the 18% that said the MAX. But Enforcer, what say you?
Dude, some people said better dead than red and would not vote for the A330. Like, honestly, I think the A330 is pretty cool. But if y'all had to ask me what my favorite Airbus aircraft is, I'm going to blow a lot of people away with this. It's going to be actually, I think, one of their biggest sellers ever. It's the A320. I think it's honestly like my favorite Airbus aircraft. No joke.
That thing is a guppy right there. I've flown that one so many times in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've landed it in Nepal. I've landed it at JFK. This thing's a great flyer, by the way.
I know, that's why I like them. They're just so cool. Like the little kind of like stubby but wide fuselage. The engines being like perfectly cylindrical. You know, like everything about this plane for some reason to me is visually pleasing. I'm like, this is a really nice looking domestic aircraft, and it does incredibly well. A lot of people love these aircraft these days. They're very common. I believe it's Airbus's top seller in terms of the amount of orders that have been placed for these things. They're incredibly cool. I think, in my opinion, this is probably my favorite Airbus aircraft. If I had to go for a Boeing aircraft, it actually would be the Boeing 747 because it's just a legend. I know I mistyped Boeing 747 there, but this thing is just a legend. I mean, you can't really like diss on the 747. It was the trendsetter for the longest time. Like, this was the plane that people wanted to get on and fly on until deregulation happened. Then it became like really any other aircraft. But what a plane this thing was. They're largely getting retired at this point. Most of them are going to be phased out of service probably by the end of this decade around the entire world. But let me see if I can get y'all. I got to say this. I'm a fan, hot take, I'm a fan of the Northwest livery. I thought it was cool.
Was U.S. Airways when they were actually in operation. I think they're defunct now, or they merged with some other company. But U.S. Airways had a fantastic looking livery. You might want to like punch that in real quick and take a look. It was really nice.
On a 747?
I don't think it was. It could have been on a 747. I think.
And let's see here. I'm going to pull up the U.S. Airways livery. Okay, I know this one. This one's the Plane of the Hudson livery. Like that's the best way to explain it. Yeah, they actually had a really cool one. Actually, that's American.
I like that.
Wait, did they
Wait a
merge
minute.
with American?
That could be it, because I think they either merged or they went defunct. But yeah, that tail art is the U.S. Airways art.
That is, I would have to say that is a pretty cool little logo design right there. But another cool one that didn't really get a lot of attention nowadays because the airline went out of business was Pan Am. I thought Pan Am had a really cool livery as well because it called back to the Clipper 314 days when they were a flying boat company, a flying boat service of a sort.
Yeah, Pan Am has like a legendary like brand status. I'm surprised they haven't been brought back. Like somebody trying to rebrand an airline as Pan Am once again, because like everybody tries to replicate like the Pan Am stuff. They put it on everything, like because they know how much like brand value it's got. But I hate that one went away. It was such a, like a classy looking airline.
I know, and also, man, like, do you know of the Boeing Clipper 314s?
No.
So this was what actually made Pan Am successful at the start, were these flying boats. This was like the entire fleet that Pan Am operated was nothing but Clippers like these. They were so cool, man. Like, they didn't carry a lot of passengers, of course. You know, it's like a 1930s era propeller plane. But they were the first company in America, I believe, to offer pretty consistent transatlantic services. I mean, it wasn't nonstop. They would have to make stops, I think, in Bermuda and a couple of other places. But it was so cool as like a concept. Like, this was a neat thing. One of these, I believe, actually got caught in the Pacific at the very beginning of World War II, and they ended up having to fly it the long way all the way back around the world and back to America. So I think the trip took them like 6 to 8 months or something like that because they got caught up in like adventures along the way. It was like a whole story. But anyways, the reason why all Pan Am aircraft were like called Clipper something was because of these planes, because all of these would be called Clipper something. You know, they would say Clipper and then there would be a name behind it. But Pan Am was the company that just endlessly used these things. Like, here's a Pan Am Clipper right here, the California Clipper in the Philippines in 1940, just a year before the outbreak of World War II. These things were so cool. I wish I could get you an interior view of one of these. I wonder if they have one. Let's see here. Dang, man, I hope they have one. I gotta find y'all let's see, 314 Clipper interior. I gotta show y'all one of these things. They were so cool. So here we go. Here's a cutaway of what a Boeing 314 Clipper looked like on the inside. These things were just so cool, man. Like, they had like a kitchen and everything in it. I mean, it was top class, man. It was nice.
That's pretty cool. I didn't actually know that looked like that on the interior. That's pretty neat. It was it like subdivided into cabins or something?
Yeah, it was subdivided into cabins. I mean, they had a smoking room in this thing. They had like a little dining area, a lounge. They had sleeping quarters, you know, because this was like a multi-day flight kind of a thing. And also, this is like the top cab up here where the flight crew would work. So you have the radio man, the pilot, the co-pilot, the stairs leading up here. It was so cool. Like, it would. Also, here's a picture inside of the dining area inside of a Clipper 314. These things were just amazingly cool. I mean, like, I love them. I think they were some of the coolest planes ever to fly.
That is cool. You won't find food like that being served on an airline today. That's for certain.
No, man, you get served garbage. Like, I don't know what the hell they do anymore with those flights, like the international flights, but the food is terrible.
Also, like funnily enough, when we went to let's see, England this one time, we flew on, I think it was like Virgin Atlantic or something like that. And we went with our family, and my dad was sitting in the seat next to me to the right, and they brought the food out, and he was already getting like airsick because he doesn't do well with motion sickness and stuff like that. So they brought the food out, and it smelled horrendous. I was like, oh my God, what is that? It smells terrible. Took one whiff of it, and that was it. It was over, and it was bad, bad, bad. And I just remember the enforcer looking over and seeing the exact moment of disaster, and seeing me trying to crawl out of a window, trying to get away from it. It was a disaster. But long story short, the airline food is so bad it can make you, it can make you go.
Yeah, it could really send you over the top. But still, I hope that does address that well, because I wanted to show y'all a little bit, not only because Duncan McIntosh brought up the whole train thing. Before we move on from this, I want to explain this. Like, Duncan McIntosh brought up the whole train thing, but really I have like a deep fascination with everything like that. So you could ask me about planes, and I would be able to come up with these really deep, in-depth stories about aircraft and like different parts of like civil aviation. Because it's always so cool, you know, like with the train. Like, a lot of people don't think of it this way, but here's why I think trains are really cool. Back in the day, especially back in their golden age in America, they were a very high-end way to travel, and not only that, Like, I mean high-end at an affordable price as well. I want to put that out there because the high-end service was a part of these railroad companies' reputations. So usually the kind of quality that you got on these services was a lot more than what you were actually putting in money-wise. So usually it was first-class service at like third-class rates compared to what you get nowadays. And not only that, it was kind of like a social kind of a thing. Like you could meet anyone on a train. You could meet businessmen traveling to and from on the train. You could meet all kinds of cool people on the train. It was the place to be. I mean, like transportation back in the day was high end, and also with aviation nowadays, once again, it's kind of lost its golden age touch. It's generally just mass transport to get a lot of people from point A to point B. But back in the day, like with the Boeing 314 Clippers that were being used by Pan Am, I mean, that was one hell of a journey, one hell of an experience on those Clippers. I mean, that was some cool stuff back then. And of course, just like the train, it was a kind of like a social event. You got to meet people on these planes. You got to fly with them for a couple of days. I mean, it's just cool as hell. And then they also drop you off in like the coolest of places, like tropical Bermuda. Like that was just literally a stop. You would go flying from a airfield on the continental U.S., land in Bermuda, then I think you would land in the Azores or something like that out here, and then you would take the last hop into Europe itself with the Clipper. Like that kind of thing is just so cool because you actually got to land at like tropical island locations and then get back on the plane and then just keep going. Like that is incredibly cool. But
it is cool. You know, how we go from the classy old days of like that and the airline flights, TWA and Pan Am and stuff like that, the Clippers, and now we've gone to Ryanair bouncing people off the runway. So how do we go from that to this?
Well, it actually I can explain it. Like there was a thing that happened in the 70s called deregulation, because back in the day, the US government and I would actually have to say, folks, in some instances, well, I'm not going to get into that because maybe that would end up becoming a political thing. But anyways, there was a thing that the United States had, which was called commercial airline regulation. And because of this, we would set the maximum and minimum amount of fares and also people that could be on an aircraft. And so it was actually an incredibly low number. And so usually these airline companies, they had no reason to really cram people into the planes because they couldn't charge more ticket prices for them. And on top of that, there was a maximum occupancy that was put onto every single aircraft design that was fairly low. And so every single seat in a lot of the aircraft back in the day, up until about the late 70s, were always pretty much just first class seats. Like, in fact, most aircraft were classless. There was no such thing as business, economy, and first class. It was just all first class because, hell, if you could only fit in a very low number of seats, just make them all first class. And hell, since you can only get so high on the ticket prices, you'll just charge on the ticket prices, the government will cover the cost, airline runs fine, everyone's still making profits at the end of the day. It's a win-win. So then the US government in the late 70s and early 80s, due to some heavy lobbying that was going on from the airline companies, they ended regulation. They deregulated the aerospace industry, at least here in America. And so at that point, you didn't have to run off of a very clear set kind of a business model that the federal government laid out that really made air travel back in the day luxurious because of the parameters that were laid out. And there was really no other way to make money rather than following the government guidelines pretty much to a T. Now they could figure out a way to actually make money. And so they would put first class at the front of the plane and business class near the front of the plane. And those are the only two classes in modern aviation industry that actually make airlines money. Like a lot of people are thinking, oh, they must be cramming all of us into economy class because we fly economy everywhere we go as well. They must be cramming us all in and making the conditions back there abhorrent and horrendous because they're trying to make more money off of economy. I hate to tell you all this, they don't make a dime off of economy. Economy is a loss. Like, they could literally just cut out that entire section of the aircraft and just fill the entire aircraft like they did during the regulatory days with nothing but first-class seats, give everyone amazing leg room, give everyone a load of space, and no profits would be lost on the end of the airline. The only thing that would be lost are the economy class seats that people are paying a pretty high price for and aren't really getting anything out of it. So that's actually
I've heard that the airlines make most of their money on the premium economy seats. You know, the ones with like the extra cushion behind your head or something, but they're not quite first class seats. I've heard that's where they make the most of their margin.
Actually, they make they make about the same margins on first class and business class from what I saw back in the day. It's something like 45% is from first class, another 45% is from business class, and then the remainder of it's like a tiny percentage, it's from economy. So really, like generally, I would have to say for everyone, like in my opinion, I would say that in that instance, I feel like government regulation returning, well, pretty much like the golden age of flight regulations that used to exist. I don't feel like that would be that bad of a thing, really, to be entirely honest, because it really did ensure that the kind of experience that you got on the airlines was a high-end experience, usually at a pretty decent fare as well, because they set the cap on how much the fares could be. So, you know, in my opinion, I'm not really against those regulations. That's what really brought about the golden age of aviation, and then when those regulations ended, that's what brought about the end of the golden age of aviation. And so, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because it's a very interesting thing about that. It's kind of like how the railroads died because the government stopped subsidizing their operations and instead diverted all of the subsidies into the interstate projects and also domestic airlines. Well, really not domestic airlines, but airline companies as a whole in airline infrastructure like major airports and such things like that. If we had not stopped that subsidization for the railroads that we were doing back in the day, mass rail transport would still exist in America alongside the interstate systems and the airline infrastructure systems that we have today. It's just that, sadly, and this is something that I can talk about because it falls within our no politics rule, because the no politics rule only applies from 1960 onwards. Eisenhower killed the American railroad. He was the one who diverted all of the funding from the American railroads over to the interstate and airline projects and pretty much starved the railroads to death.
Well, that was smart at the time, though. I will say that was smart because of everything going on with the wars and stuff like that. The interstate has been very good for military transport and things like that, and that was the whole purpose behind it. It was mainly military. But, you know, I think it was smart, man. Don't bash Eisenhower. He was a good man.
Well, Eisenhower was a great president. I will say that. He was actually pretty good. But one thing I'll also say is that why was it that back in the day the decision had to be made to axe the amazing railroad infrastructure we had at the time to bring about the interstate and the airline? Because the interstate was for supposed military reasons, but it doesn't make a lot of sense because the American railroad system was able to transport a larger mass of military equipment and troops throughout the country at a faster speed and at a cheaper price. And so it doesn't really make a lot of sense that the argument was made that, oh, we're making the interstate for strategic reasons, because strategically, the railroads were a lot more efficient and a lot cheaper and usually got a larger bulk of troops and equipment around the country quicker, in all honesty, because a lot of people think of the American railroads today as these slow, like stupidly slow kind of like sorts of transportation where it's going like 30 and 40 miles an hour. Back in the day, because the government was subsidizing a lot of these companies so they could go and throw in upgrades to the rails endlessly and they didn't really have to worry about losing a lot on their bottom line. Usually back in the day, railroad infrastructure in America could support speeds in excess of 100 miles an hour pretty much across most of our networks in America. It was faster.
You know why they chose to do the interstate? There's another reason, not just for the infrastructure reasons, and also it's good for the military. But you know the other reason? Do you happen to know?
And what is that reason?
So if I have my history correct, and you'll have to see if this checks out because I'm not the history guy, but I believe we chose to do the interstate specifically at that time because Germany had just got done building their interstate system, and it was slightly a political thing, like trying to basically keep up with what Germany was doing. And also we thought it was a good idea because they were using that to transport their military equipment, and we figured we ought to replicate the same thing over here in the United States. Do I have that correct?
I think so, a little bit. I think, if I'm remembering the history correctly, I think Eisenhower was all, because Eisenhower, of course, was in the Army for an incredibly long time, and they had some sort of a exercise where his group, his unit that he was in, I forgot which one it was, had to travel across the entire continental United States on road, kind of as like an overland exercise and land nav and all that stuff, coordination and everything, as I fling my phone around because my finger caught onto the charger cable right there. But I think that during that trip, according to Eisenhower's autobiography, he said that it was hell because most of the roads weren't paved, and he thought in his head there has to be a better way for road transport to happen. But really, like, the truth is, folks, is that you don't have to pick one or the other with transport. It's actually good to have a really diversified transportation network. So why not have the railroads, passenger rail and cargo rail, at a really high quality alongside high quality road infrastructure and air infrastructure? We shouldn't be sacrificing one for the other. We should be trying to improve them all at the same time and have a wide variety of options, so that way if one of them ends up being not so advantageous in one scenario, another one would be, instead of having to force everything either onto the roads or in the skies. You could have stuff on the roads, the skies, and the rails, and pick the most economic routes for each.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. If you can do both of them, then that's great. But I think at the time, I think they had to pick and choose. I think it was basically like, I don't know if the correct term is guns and butter, but whatever it is, they had to pick and choose. So they chose the interstate. But just the vast amount of territory that the U.S. covers, it's kind of hard to really maintain a train system and a railroad system quite like the U.K. does. It's just the raw space, man. Like, for example, when you start having heat problems with your railroad tracks because the heat starts warping the rails, it's really hard to go back and repair that and fix it across a vast expanse like the United States has compared to Britain's small landmass.
That's not true, man. America was the king of rails. I mean, legitimately, no lie. Even now, even with how bad railroad infrastructure has gotten, in Wyoming, where it gets not too hot, but it gets fairly hot there during the summer months, especially nowadays, they still are able to run large, I mean, when I say large freight trains, I'm talking about like almost 2 miles in length, which really heats up the tracks below them. With a train that length, it is burning up the rails under it by the time the train passes over that piece of rail. They are still able to get those things up to 75, 70 miles an hour out there on the Sherman Pass route, or wait a minute, the Sherman Hill route. Sorry, that's the correct statement for that. And also on the Mojave to Bakersfield route, which is one of the hottest ones in California. They are also able to get it on up to 70 miles an hour, which is the fastest that freight locomotives can actually reach here in America by their own design specifications. So it is entirely possible in hotter areas to be able to maintain and upkeep railroad infrastructure where high speeds are possible, because back in the day, like way back in the day, I'm talking about in the 1920s and 30s, it was not only possible to upkeep the infrastructure, they were able to run what we would call in America nowadays high-speed rail services in excess of 100 miles an hour across pretty much the entirety of the United States, through the deserts, through the East Coast, the West Coast, the Midwest, the South. I mean, everywhere there was high-speed rail access.
So maybe so. I just remember when we were in the UK that one time, we rode the train and they were talking about, oh dear, the heat has warped the tracks and we have to go slow. And I was like, they warped the tracks, you gotta go slow. It's like, what? It's like, I thought this was a speed train. And they were like, no, the heat's warped the tracks. It's like, okay, it's like, that's kind of different. It's like, you can only go fast when it's not hot. And so I thought it wasn't even hot in the UK. It's like, apparently it is, but you're saying they were lying?
Yeah, they were lying, man. That route, I think the speed limit on that route from London to Oxford gets up to like, I think 90 or 110 as like the route average. Like hot heat doesn't really affect rails that way, because like 100 degrees is not that much for steel. I mean, steel has a melting temperature in the thousands of degrees of Fahrenheit. What is the difference in between 80 degrees to 110 degrees going to do to a steel rail iron? Like, it's going to do nothing. That guy was saying that crap.
It seems like maybe with a little bit of heat and a little bit of force from the train going over it, it seems like maybe it could become malleable, not necessarily melt or something like that. But I've heard from someone in the past, I can't remember where the source was, trust me, bro, that someone said that the train tracks can get warped with just a little bit of heat.
If you're talking about me as the source, because I'm not really sure if I ever said that or not, that is not true. Because also, Matthew, remember the next time we went to Britain, we went to Stonehenge. It was the hottest year on record over there, and someone dropped out a heat stroke at Stonehenge. And they went, "Are you okay?" As they were like waterboarding them on the ground. and then me and Mama got on the train in Bath. Remember this, Matthew? That train went 125 miles an hour the entire way, like pretty much. And there was no heat advisory out for that train. It was hotter then than it was in the first trip when we heard that load of crap. And we were going the maximum speed limit from Bath to London that was possible.
Interesting, interesting. And also, by the way, I see the audience starting a riot down here that
Yeah.
wants to jump off this talk immediately.
Yeah, and so we will move on. We've been on this for an incredibly long time, but I hope that some people found it interesting because I always like to talk about some off-topic things a little bit, and I really do enjoy talking about planes, trains, ships, whatever you want to talk about. It's really fun to me. But with that, huge thanks once again for the support, Duncan McIntosh. Started off a really, really deep rabbit hole. It went on forever, but with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next super chats here are going to go to Stan Katz, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much for that support.
Hey!
And also BC Skyme as well, excuse me, who put in a 50 also. And thank you very much, Stan and BC, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. And sadly, no comments to address, but we appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to say a huge thanks to Stan Katz and BC Skyman. Both of y'all threw in a 50. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but the support is greatly appreciated. And we thank y'all so much for being here with us tonight and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so, of course, a massive thanks to both of y'all. And a massive thanks to BC Skyman, an absolute channel legend. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to NoobTube, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, NoobTube, as well, for that very generous support. They said, hiya. This is for the Whirlybird medicine for Matt Fun. And take a question from the chat and LSA. And thank you very much, NoobTube. For some reason, I had a slight cough earlier today, and that got me very worried because that's the Whirlybird symptom, the key one. And now, all of a sudden, it's coming back a tad. So I told y'all it came in waves, and I think the wave is hitting once again. But thank you very much for the Whirlybird medicine. I don't know if there is such medicine like that, but I'll have to look for it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say a huge thanks to you once again for the support, YouTube, and hey, and also thank you so much for giving the Whirlybird medicine fund to my boy Matt. He really does need the Whirlybird medicine really desperately. And of course, we will make sure to take a question from the chat as well. And long live the Spring Army. And what do we got for a live chat, Matty, from NoobTube?
And this one's going to go to Riley W, who says, when and how do you think Iran will strike Israel?
I would say that when and how Iran will strike Israel, I'm not really sure if they will at this point. And to be honest with you, even getting anything into that, it feels like crystal balling because everyone keeps on saying everything under the sun and everyone's been wrong. Like every single person's been wrong on that. And I don't want to be jumping into the middle of that because it would not go well. I would also be wrong as well, and I would look like an idiot. And while we generally look like idiots, I don't want to look like an idiot in that form. Like I hope that explains that well. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Tesla said, sorry, but in this case, you are 100% wrong. Heat buckles are a constant problem on every rail system in the world. And I think that is true. But as far as what I'm talking about with like speed restrictions because of heat, like, you know, that's something that where I think that that's not something that happens commonly. Like, if a defect is found, then they will put out a speed advisory or they'll close a rail and then replace it or repair it. But I don't think they're going to be like, hey, everyone, like, it's like 95 degrees out, speed restrictions on everything. You know, because it's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't sound accurate to me because I've never heard that except for that one time. And then we went over there and it was hotter the next time than the first time we went over there on vacation. And then we got on a train and that train actually went 125 miles an hour the entire way. And so then I was like, yeah, I think that's not really true. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Big shout out once again to NoobTube for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to James Alexander, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, James, as well, for that support. He said, I've been away, but I've kept you on my phone, and let's go, LSA!
Hey, and let's go, baby! And welcome back, James Alexander. And it's perfectly okay to have been away for a while. And I got to say thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say, thank you for keeping us on your phone. We love to know that we're somewhere out there for everyone. And I'm good and I'm good and happy to know that we were on your phone the entire time. And so with that, welcome back to James Alexander. I hope that you have enjoyed the streams on your phone as best you can. And also, a big shout out to everyone who enjoyed the video today on their phone or off their phone, because the video that was put out today has ended up reaching an insane, an unbelievable 375,000 views at this moment. It's wildly viewed. I mean, we don't have a lot of videos that get viewed like that. The highest viewed video on this channel ever is 475,000 views. So that one is not that far off, and it's still going at this point. And I got to give a huge thanks to everyone who's been watching these streams and our videos, because of course we put a large amount of work into both of them. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, James Alexander. I hope that does address that well. And of course, long live the Spring Army, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bama3891, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much as well, Bama, for that support. And also, fellow Alabamian, welcome to the club. He said, well, long-term NATO strategy impacts from war in Ukraine, given recent militarization of the region.
I would say the NATO strategy will probably be the same one they had during the Cold War. Just keep a decent standing force near the border, and then make sure that the doctrine in the area is geared towards a rapid response. Of course, a defensive meant to stabilize the front line and then start to focus on a counteroffensive later. So I feel like it's probably just going to revert back to what it was during the Cold War, because really, honestly, since the collapse of the Soviet Union up till now, NATO has really had no kind of a strategy inside of Eastern Europe, because there was really no hostilities in Eastern Europe to be concerned about at this level. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, Bama 3891. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Jolly Hiveling, who puts in a 20, and thank you very much, Jolly, for that support as well. They said, I heard a rumor that Hot Dog and Chris's mom are in cahoots with each other.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, they might be these days. You never know. Because, you know, they're off doing crazy stuff, stupid stuff. You know, it's hilarious, folks, because y'all know, at least a lot of y'all who've been around a long time, and Matthew, you know what I'm about to be saying, a lot of y'all know that we've pretty much had our lives threatened by the hot dog man and his people, and no matter how many times at the start we tried to just tell the guy, hey, let's just drop this and like go our separate ways, the guy would never drop it. And so our lives were constantly in peril, and we were constantly in a state of danger. And so then recently something happened. And so then the guy wants to come out and then he wants to go, oh my God, this big YouTube channel, it just keeps bullying me and I don't know what to do. It's like, we should be saying that. It's like, oh my God, guys, this tiny YouTube channel with like no following keeps on weaponizing the little bit of an audience they have to target us and try and destroy our lives, or possibly even have us injured or killed for no reason, like no legitimate reason. Like that's something I wish that we could do a little bit more talking about that specific person. We don't want to, of course, turn this into a drama channel. We have a main job here, which is to be focused on Western interest and American interest as far as our news coverage goes. But still, it's absolutely crazy to have to deal with someone like that all the time, and then they try and change their story however they can to just make it work. It's funny to watch, like the gymnastics that are done by this guy, because one day he'll go, I am powerful enough that the irrelevant enforcers are going to be destroyed by me and I'm going to steal all of their viewers. And then the next day they go, help, I'm being bullied, when we don't even mention their actual name. Like, this guy has doxed us, like shown where we live, and has encouraged people to come to where we live. He's sent us an email himself, threatening to physically harm us, legitimately. Like, we have the email still. And he
said he was going to drag his nuts over our hometown. I said, why would you do that? We don't even live there anymore.
Yeah, he drag his nuts over our hometown. He was going to he was going to break my jaw, and then he was going to beat Matthew close to death, something along those lines.
But he said I would last a little bit longer, though. He was worried about me, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. But nevertheless, this guy physically threatens us directly over email, which, by the way, I believe that may be some sort of a crime, like to do that in writing over state lines, because that would be technically some sort of a federal crime, most likely. Maybe we ought to call up his, maybe we ought to give someone a ring about that. But beyond that, it's crazy to have to deal with someone like that, and we just, we make little jokes on this channel to deal with it, because the guy just won't quit no matter what. Like, he won't drop it. And then you sit there and you sit there and you get annoyed with people who backed him up back when we tried to do something about this guy constantly harassing us. You get annoyed about them, then they want to say something. I don't even know why in the world they're saying something about us. It's like, you know, because you were involved. You didn't have to get involved. You put yourself in the middle of it, and then you attacked us back then when we clearly told you this guy is crazy and we're trying to defend ourselves from a lunatic in his lunatic community. And then someone wants to act like they're offended from that. And then the guy comes out, the hot dog man comes out, and then starts going, I mean, maybe I went about it a little bit the wrong way. It's like, you threatened us with our lives. Like, that is the wrong way to go about it. But, you know, what's crazy? What's crazy, folks? You won't hear anything about that anywhere else beyond this channel. Because everyone else's mindset on that was, sure, Hot Dog Man threatened your life. Sure, he doxed you. Sure, his community was coming after you. Sure, they tried to have you swatted at law school, and there's an actual police report out there in the Tri-County area where we're from of that happening. Sure, all that happened, but hey, what you tried to do to stop him from doing that was totally wrong. Like, that is literally the mindset that everyone else has on that. And it just blows me away, because if that had happened in any other section on YouTube, everyone would have equally condemned that person, instead of just going, whoa, hey, don't rock the boat. Like, yeah, sure, your life is in danger, but whoa, hey, don't rock the boat. Like, that is absolutely crazy to me, that's the mindset that a lot of people have, because if that was something that happened to them, I don't feel like they would be thinking the same way. Like the best example that we have for that is, every once in a while I'll do a voice. I'll do a voice maybe of some other person, you know, a YouTuber or a politician or something like that, just to kid around and get a little bit of a laugh. And so apparently someone took great offense to that lately. And so that one thing, me just doing a silly, childish joke, to be entirely honest with the whole voice thing, gets someone riled up enough that they're going to make an entire community post and try and sick their entire community on us over that. But apparently when we try to do something about someone doxing us and putting us in actual legitimate danger, whoa, buddy, that's too much. Rules for thee, but not for me, is the mindset of many people that are in this sphere. Like, and it really blows me away about that we still get harassed by this guy. It still goes on. Some of these YouTubers actually know about the exact kind of harassment that we deal with, and yet they are fine with it. I don't know why. I actually Matthew and me know fairly well and why it's the case. It's generally because we don't get into politics, so we don't fall into one camp or the other to have a little circle around us, a clique that will come and protect us, because, you know, we're not of one side or the other for that clique. But, you know, that is what it is. So we just endlessly get harassed, still getting harassed. And does anyone ever say anything about the person who's harassing us? No. But if we crack jokes about it, whoa, crossing the line, buddy. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Maybe explaining that a little bit better, because I would have to say that I think that Hot Dog Man and Chris's mom must be in cahoots these days, because it's crazy how the world runs beyond this channel. But still, huge thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Rob S., who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Rob, as well, for that support. Hey! He said, keep up the great work, and take one from the chat. LOC.
And thank you so much for the support, Rob S., and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you for enjoying the great work, and thank you so much for wanting us to take one from the chat. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And what do we got, Matthew?
And this live chat question is going to go to Daniel, who said, do you think that Ukraine could gain so much land that they trade for Crimea? And it would be funny if they got Crimea using boots in Russia. That would be crazy if they did. I'm not really sure if that would be the case yet, because the Russians really are fighting the entire war for Crimea. That's kind of like the whole crux of the issue, is that they were scared of losing Crimea and Sevastopol and the Black Sea Fleet's base in that area. So from what we know, they probably wouldn't give that up first. If they had to give up anything, I believe they would give up the remainder of Zaporizhia first and cut the land bridge in two, because they would rather see the loss of the land bridge than the loss of Crimea. They might give up Kherson, but I'm highly doubting Kherson, because Kherson literally borders Crimea. So then you're setting the Ukrainians up for a ground offensive into Crimea if they were to give up that land. So in my opinion, yes, they would give up something, but I don't think it would be Crimea, and I think it would most likely be a area in the Donbass or Zaporizhia, one or the other. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Rob S., in supporting and sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. All right, and our next one here is going to go to, let's see, it goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Hoodoo, for your support as well. He said, it disturbs me to no end that the Germans still reference cat names to their tanks. He said, Tiger, Panther, Leopard, Panther K-51, carrying on the World War II tradition, and Panthers and Tigers were crappy tanks, and heavy tanks for a medium tank war.
And I thank you for the support, Hoodoo Texas. And I'd also have to say that it is interesting to see the Germans still name their tanks after cats, because that all started in World War II, and then they never dropped it. That is actually really interesting to note. But also another thing is, I completely agree with you. Panthers and Tigers were garbage. Like, no one knows that, really. Like, a lot of people think, oh, the Panther, it was great. I will say this, though. The Panther's, like, shape and design was stunning. I would have to say, as far as my favorite design tank from World War II, the Panther is actually my favorite, because it's like that little middle ground in between a World War II tank through and through and a modern-day main battle tank design, at least in my mind. Like, you can't lie. That was a pretty, like, influential design. Well, I wouldn't say influential, but it certainly was a really cool design.
It influenced a lot. It actually did.
But as far as the actual vehicle itself, they were terrible. Generally because of the what would we call it? The mobility issues it had, the transmission failures. The transmission on these things would disintegrate for the large part, and the engines also were wildly underpowered on pretty much every single German tank beyond the Panzer IIIs and IVs. Every single tank in the German army was underpowered for the engine that they had. So while a lot of people always talk about German quality and engineering, I would have to say that German quality and engineering never really moved on into the transmissions and engines of their vehicles, because BMW still carries on that proud tradition to this day. But beyond that, I would also have to say that, yes, I don't really like these tanks much. And on top of that, one thing that a lot of people don't know is that the M4 Sherman, on multiple occasions, and this is documented, like, they actually were able to confirm the tank was a Tiger. The M4 Sherman, with the short 75mm gun that you see on this one right here, on this M4A3, was able to actually break apart the front plate of Tiger 1s on several occasions. Because it wasn't necessarily the front plate's armor that would protect, well, that was the weakness of the Tiger, because the Tiger 1 and the Panther actually had fairly strong frontal armor. The problem was the welds, and that's something that no one talks about, because the Tiger 1 right here, which is the tank I'm talking about, this giant front plate up here, Matt, do you see the one where you can see the machine gunner's bulb and also the driver's periscope right there?
Yes.
So this giant piece of steel was one cast piece, and they would weld it onto the front of the tank. So when a Sherman, like, I believe there was at least 2 documented instances of this very thing happening in World War II. When a Sherman would fire at that, and it would hit that front plate dead center, it would hit it with enough force that it wouldn't actually hurt anyone in the tank, but it would completely shatter the welds, and the entire front armor plate would literally just flip over frontwards and then slide off of the front of the tank, exposing the entire interior of the Tiger. That happened, I think, at least twice in the war. So that's something that a lot of people don't talk about either, is that, yeah, German tanks were cool as hell to look at, but they had a decent amount of flaws inside of them, generally mobility issues, but the armor also ended up posing a problem as well. But still, I would completely agree with you on all that, Hoodoo Texas, 100%. And heavy tanks were even, like, dated by World War II standards. Like, heavy tanks had armor and they had firepower, but they had no mobility, which largely led them to being sitting ducks for air support, airstrikes, artillery, what have you. And then Hitler went on to come up with a stupid idea of the mouse and was like, yeah, what if we made like this big tank that was so big it couldn't even move over any bridge in Europe. It would have to snorkel its way on the bottom of the river and probably get stuck in the silt. But then they came up with this stupid thing. Like, it wouldn't just get hit by a P-47 dropping 1,000-pound bomb near it and kill everyone in the tank from overpressure. This was a ridiculous idea. Like, this thing was truly like the epitome of Nazi stupidity, really. And I don't even know why in the world they would even put effort and time into this thing, because the amount of steel that they wasted on the Mouse project was insane. Like, it was ridiculous. They could have made plenty of more tanks with the steel that was put into this, but nevertheless, they did this, and it was ridiculous. Like, best way I could explain it. But still, huge thanks to you once again, Hoodoo Texas. I hope that does talk about that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to William P., who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, William, as well, for that support. Hey! Bosnia apparently still uses World War II era trains.
They do, actually. That's actually a really cool fact. They use a lot of steam locomotives in Bosnia as well. Let me see if I can find y'all a couple of pictures of them, because they're actually, I think some of them actually are Austro-Hungarian. They're that old. So let me see here. International steam. Oh, look, yeah, they, like, someone from the UK big shout out to the UK. They probably got like the biggest community of train spotters in the world in the UK. They actually made an entire article way back in the day, like back in the 90s, about steam locomotives in Bosnia, but they're really cool. So I'll show you all a couple of them, not a lot of them, but here are some of the steam locomotives that were at, like, they were in bad shape, by the way, like, just putting that out there, but they were still working in Bosnia. They were Austro-Hungarian designs or Yugoslavian designs, pretty cool stuff. But the last steam locomotive trains to really run a whole load, they're in some kind of a, let's see, steam, hang on, let me see if I can find them. Steam trains in China, because it's a specific coal mine in China that these trains run in. The Shandaoling steam locomotives, there we go. Oh, when I show these to y'all are going to be like, oh my god, these are in rough shape, and they really are. It's that commie kind of aesthetic out here, that desolation kind of drip.
Oh, yeah, that desolation type of drip?
Yeah, man, like look at that, man. That's rough. Like, look at this. My god.
Oh, man. That's desolation right there. That's steam operation ends in China. Well, thank God it ended.
Thank God it's over, because this was, like, dude, that looks like something from a horror movie right here. It looks like you're about to get flayed on the side of this thing. Like, rough stuff, man. But anyways, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And that is actually true. Bosnia still runs some steam locomotives, and Poland also does as well. But theirs are like really on the on the out end. Like, they're about to be replaced completely. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Gregory Albright.
Hey!
Excuse me, for putting in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Gregory, for that support. But no comment to address. And also, shout out to Marco B, who put in an $11 donation. And thank you very much, Marco, as well, for that support. And we appreciate it very much from Gregory and Marco. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, Gregory, Marco, and
Gregory and Marco.
I worked in a lab in Wuhan as a janitor.
But beyond that, thank you to Gregory.
See, I went to the spreadsheet and I looked for the super chats, and I couldn't find the chats when I looked in the supers. So I said I got to go put that bear up in the Central Park and put it centrally on the grill of my car.
Dude, that's actually perfect. I cannot do that one perfect at all. Like, mine's pretty rough, but still. Thank you so much once again, Gregory and Marco B, for the support. Both of y'all have been here for a while. I thank y'all greatly for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to y'all once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Andy L. Thank you very much, Andy, for that $20 support. He said, no problems on lag, no worries. The true LSA stands with you.
And I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
But beyond that, thank you so much for the support, Andy L. I gotta say, thank you for saying that the true Lee Spring Army stands with us. It means a lot. I know the real Lee Spring Army, the legit Lee Spring Army, stands with the channel through and through. And that is something that has always been the ire of haters. They're always saying, man, you know, like the Enforcer channel, no one listens to anything on the Enforcer channel from what we say. It's like, yeah, because they know it's bullshit. Like, that's the honest truth. But I gotta say, thank you so much, Andy L, for being one of those dedicated members of the Lee Spring Army who helps this channel to keep on running. And not only that, it will always be with this channel through and through. There's many like that, and I gotta thank every single one of y'all for being some of those folks. And so with that, huge thanks to y'all once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Kevin Thatcher, who puts in a $20 donation. And also, just a disclaimer once again, just an impersonation of the guy, not trying to mock his impediment or anything like that. It's just an imitation of how he sounds, that's all. Same as somebody, if they imitated me and they put a southern drawl on a voice, I'm not going to take offense. It's just me. But anyways, we have that $20 super chat from Kevin Thatcher. He said that we appreciate all the hard work, and I think we are going to see something dramatic. Maybe not nukes, but probably a chemical attack within Russia's own borders.
Possibly, Kevin. Actually, a lot of people have talked about that, either a chemical or a biological attack happening against the Ukrainians in Kursk. I feel like it's not really that high of a chance, because if they're going to do that, why not do nuclear? Because everyone kind of views them all three as the same thing, so why not just fling a little nuke at them? So I would say maybe that would happen. But once again, much like a nuke, how many collateral Russian civilian casualties would be had from a chemical or a biological attack against the Ukrainians? Who knows? But still, I would have to say that may be a possibility. I mean, I'm not ruling it out entirely. I feel like it's a small chance, but there could be a possibility for something like that happening. Also, thank you so much once again for appreciating all the hard work and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, I see a lot of people saying that the impression that you do is hilarious, Matthew. I guess there's a small, like, I want to say this really quickly. We do impressions of everyone in, like, we don't talk about politics and we don't pick sides or anything, but we do impressions of everyone who is in politics. Like, we do, what do you mean, Jack? And we do, it's the greatest, it's the best, it's absolutely incredible. And then we do this one, and for some reason people always get offended, and you know what I always like come to the conclusion of when people get offended by that stuff, they must support that person and they can't take a joke because they like them too much. Like, I guess that's it. Because, you know, it's a joke. Like, you know, it's just get over it. Just move on. It's a joke. People make jokes all the time. And, you know, it just is what it is. I don't know why people always take it so seriously. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, a huge shout out to Tony Blazina, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Tony, for that support. And we also had a 10 from Elaine Levac. And thank you very much, Elaine, as well, for that support. And sadly, no comments to address on either one of these, but thank you both very much for supporting the channel, and we appreciate that very much. And we also have a $10 super chat from Uncovered Cube, who said, any rabbit holes or cool history on Henry Clay? And said his local Ashland estate is nice in the fall, and close to the Mary Todd Lincoln House in LSA.
Let's see, Henry Clay. Let me try and... Wait a minute. Henry Clay. No, I think I remember who this is now, because I had to go pull him up really quickly. I had to be entirely honest with y'all. Let's see here. Oh my lord, this guy's got a rap sheet. Like, so to give you all an idea, I think if I remember correctly, he had something to... Yeah, he did! He actually was the one who ended up coming to the Missouri Compromise. That's where I remember him from, because he was taught about in U.S. history in college and in high school as the guy who brought about the Missouri Compromise. But no one really talks about Henry Clay much beyond that. So sadly, I wouldn't have any specific rabbit holes to go in on Henry Clay about, but if y'all want to hear a little bit about what the guy did, he was born in Virginia. That's something. He was a member of the Democrat-Republican Party. What a combination. What a mix. By the way, that's in the, like, very early 1800s, so literally everything that party stood for is completely different than modern politics, just putting that out there. So don't sit there and be like, oh my god, he got into politics, because it's not the case. This is in our no politics rule, because this is before 1960. But anyways, he won the election to the state legislature. He was chosen... Let's see, led the United States into the War of 1812 against Great Britain, along with James Madison. He helped to negotiate the Treaty of Ghent. Wow, that's pretty cool. Because the Treaty of Ghent brought the end to the War of 1812. And dang, Matthew, I hate to hear that. Because... one second. Actually, 1 second, everyone. I'm gonna have to stop this because I have a breaking announcement. And I went about that so badly trying to segue my way into that. So there's still a good way to do this. Matthew's feeling a little bit rough, so he is going to have to get off for the night. But I got to give him a huge shout out and a thanks again. I hope that everyone does for him being here tonight. He was sick the entire time. Couldn't even tell it on air. Matthew is an absolute legend of the channel. The Cult of Matt should be proud. And so, Matthew, do you have any last words to say?
I just have to say this, that somehow the wave has come back and it's come back strong. So this is going to probably be a multi-day thing for me. So I'm going to keep coming back every night. I might have to leave early for a few more nights and probably just tone it down a little bit. But I will keep coming back because I'm dedicated to coming on the channel. And also, thank y'all for bearing with me as well, because I'm not my usual self with this going on. So thank y'all for bearing with that. But with that, I'll see you all tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll be on the short war video tomorrow because I'm not sure if I have the strength for it. But if I do, y'all hear me on that, and you'll definitely hear me on the stream tomorrow night as well. And also, thank you all once again for the get wishes, and I will see you then. So, Enforcer, I'm going to throw it over to you.
All right, and we'll see y'all. We'll see you around, Enforcer Man, and good night to you. But moving on from that, and back to what we were talking about, Henry Clay certainly has one hell of a rap sheet. I mean, no lie about it. But still, I gotta say, very interesting person through and through. Sadly, I don't have any good rabbit holes on him at the moment. But still, thank you so much once again for support Uncovered Cube and helping this channel to keep on running. And I wish I could talk about him more, but I just don't know enough about him to be able to talk about him a lot. And I know that's shocking for everyone because everyone always expects me to be able to talk about anything and everything. But sadly, there are some gray areas in my learning of history. And sadly, Henry Clay, one of the most influential people in early U.S. politics there was, I don't really know a lot about him. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Wellness LSA Latvian. Hey! Wellness said, hello, enforcers. In my humble opinion, you guys went too far with this unsinkable LSA tracked ship. I would like to promote you to captains and last musicians. Good job delivering those goods news all over the world. And thank you so much for the kind words, Wellness LSA Lobby. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you from around the world always have incredibly kind things to say. We thank y'all so much for them. And I also thank you for really putting it in a very interesting way in that super chat as well. It means a lot to us. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Travis George. Hey! And Travis George said, yesterday somebody asked if you could marker when talking about map. You said no because using Google something, let's see, control panel, mouse, pointer options, show location of cursor when I press control. Let's see. I'll have to look into that off stream. I'm not going to do that on air because I don't know if I'm going to, throw up anything on air that shouldn't be on air. But I still thank you for the support and sharing that with me, Travis George, and trying to give me a couple of ideas on how I could try and point out things on the map a little bit better. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Travis George. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and the next one is from John Barnard. And John Barnard said, $10 for you because of denial of service and no need to read my super chat on air. We appreciate you. Well, I got to tell you something, John Barnard. We read every single super chat on air, and I got to say that it is a incredible thing, a wonderful thing for folks to always enjoy this channel and always wanting to support it. And of course, thank you for the support even through the DDoS attacks that we had to deal with tonight. And we always read off every super chat on air. And so I got to thank you massively once again, John Barnard, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are moving on into the next one, which is a $10 super chat from High C King. Hey! And High C King said, I usually leave a chat every day. Hey, how's your eye today, Enforcer? It was probably allergies. It's doing a lot better. I just stopped touching it, like rubbing my eye, and it ended up getting a lot better really quickly. And some said it may be pink eye. Can you explain that, Poop? It causes pink eye. Yes, it actually does. Pink eye is sometimes caused by fecal matter. That is actually something true. But pink eye isn't always caused by that. Sometimes it's caused by other stuff, but usually that is one of the main reasons that pink eye is caused. But still, I thank you so much once again for support, and also thank you so much for checking up on my eye, because it was really rough last night. It was like burning, but it stopped about like 3 o'clock in the morning. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Miranda Nelson. Hey! Miranda said, the lag problem is frustrating. I agree with you completely, Miranda. It really is. Can't offer any encouragement that there is a plan to diagnose and solve it. Sadly, at the moment, there isn't. The truth is that usually those are DDoS attacks. Many people will say, how do you know? Well, we ended up tracking one of them one time back to a VPN based in the Netherlands where this DDoS attack had come from. So we know that most of the time when things like that happen, it's actually someone deliberately DDoS attacking this channel. So sadly, there's not really a lot we can do, because those kind of denial of service attacks are something that we really don't have a good defense to, because we're working through a YouTube server, and that means that YouTube's security and YouTube's defenses has to be better. We can't really do much about that because YouTube's not us. They're a completely different company. So sadly, there's not really a lot of positive news that I can give on that, at least at the moment. But still, thank you for the support, and thank you for voicing your frustrations, because I'd agree with it. It is entirely annoying even to me as well, especially because whenever the lag happens, I have to completely stop the monologue that I'm trying to come up with while I'm doing this in my head and wait for it to pass and then try and start it all up again. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Vlonger. And News, nothing to say, just donate and take one from the chat instead. And thank you so much for the support, vlogger, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. And so with that, we have a live chat from David Teblet. And hey, and David said, I'm wondering if Putin gave nukes to Belarus to give Putin plausible deniability when they're used. Maybe so, but I have a feeling if the Belarusians use nukes, considering that they were given to them by the Russians, it'll be viewed as a Russian action. Kind of like how when America gives weapons to Ukraine, it could be possibly construed as an American action if those weapons are used in a certain way, shape, or form. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well. Thank you once again for support and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next, which is a $10 super chat from Jordan Walters. And Jordan said, I see the chat with nothing to say and concur. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for saying you see the chat with nothing to say and do concur. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from HerpDerpInV. And HerpDerp said, love the impression as always. And thank you so much for the support. Love the fly and the bear in Central Park guy impressions. And they seem so oddly similar. And I bet they would have a lot in common with each other in real life. I can't speak to that end. I can't, because I think both of them are different kinds of something that I'm not going to get into on stream, but they are certainly something. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. HerpDerpInV, it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Paramecium13. Hey! And Paramecium said, look at the review on Google Maps from 2 months ago of border crossing automobile checkpoint Zucha, state border of the Russian Federation. There are also some reviews of nearby places. We did find those actually last night, funnily enough, Paramecium. And I believe, let's see here, border crossing automobile checkpoint. Let's check the reviews out here. Let's see. Hang on. Let's take a look. Neighbors welcome guests without enthusiasm and smiles, sometimes even hails. I recommend crossing the border in this place only with heavy armor. Everything is clear. Let's see. We were greeted pleasantly. They really ran off somewhere. One of them actually fell out of his chair. What a bungler. And let's see. There's actually pretty good ones. Like we saw a lot of these actually last night, but still a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Paramecium. It is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help to keep on running, and we are greatly appreciative of that. And so huge thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Edgar Vilmanis, a 5 from B-Man, and also those are the only two we have at the moment. And I gotta give a huge shout out to Edgar's Vilmanis and B-Man for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel rolling. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but we're still greatly appreciative of the support, and thank y'all once again. And with that, we are on to a $6 super chat from E. And E said, hi Enforcers, I've discovered your channel recently, and I want to know your thoughts on another YouTube channel. Well, I gotta tell you, E, thank you for the support, but I usually do not weigh in directly on other YouTube channels by name. Generally, I don't try and talk about YouTube channels at all unless we had some kind of direct dealings with them, either positive or negative. So usually I try and reserve my comments on those kinds of channels. So I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And I'm sure that you've heard me tonight talk about some other YouTube channel, specifically the Hot Dog Man, which is a YouTube channel. We came up with a nickname for that channel because we're not going to give them any kind of, I guess you could say, exposure, because that's really what they're looking for. They've made that very clear. They've literally said that that's what they're looking for, so we're never going to give them any kind of exposure on this channel. But beyond that, we only talk about YouTube channels we've dealt with. Very rarely do I talk about any others. Usually I only talk about them when they're completely pro-Russian and we're just blasting them for being pro-Russian. But beyond that, I usually do not get into comments on them. It creates unnecessary problems, to be honest, with the few YouTube channels we've ended up dealing with in the past. We have plenty enough problems as it is. And so I generally don't want to go around just trying to pick up problems for the hell of it, because we didn't try to pick up problems initially, and then we got them anyways for one reason or another. But still, thank you so much once again for support, E. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Seth. Hey! And Seth said, Keep up the good work. I love watching your guys' videos. And thank you so much for the support, Seth, and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you so much once again for really enjoying the videos, because a lot of people have been enjoying them lately, and we love to see it, me personally. And so with that, huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a 5 from ZMC Knight 319. Hey, and said, Geschnick Leitman that in Deutschen Vogue. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, because I have not done that impersonation in a hot minute. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Turd Nerd. And Turd Nerd said, these Facebook live streams, this effing Twitter bullshit. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and keep making it possible. So huge thanks once again. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is from Nathaniel Doggett. And Nathaniel, I'm believing, said, your coverage is second to none. My only regret is not discovering you sooner. Great work. Thank you so much for the kind words. Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot to us. We love to know that people are enjoying our work and really finding it to be worthwhile. We put our heart and soul into this. I say this so much, but we really do. We haven't taken a vacation in years because we've been doing this the entire time. Hell, I haven't even been able to do things I really did enjoy before I started running a YouTube channel, like going to reenacting events. I haven't been able to be at a reenacting event for years at this point. Ever since I started doing this, I haven't really been able to go to one. And I kind of miss that, to be honest. I wish I could. But still, I got to keep this thing rolling. And so this does take priority even over things I'd want to do. And I got to thank you so much for appreciating the amount of time and effort we put into this, because it means a lot. And so with that, thank you so much once again. With that, we are on to the next one, which is a $4 super chat from the Dead Gentleman. And the Dead Gentleman said, get an onion to tape to his feet. Get Matt an onion to tape to his feet. And I gotta say, your medicinal ways are very interesting, Dead Gentleman. But I'm very interested in them. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one. And the next one is a $2 super chat from Zulok. And Zulok said, my Chancellor, I can walk! Evade! But still, thank you so much for the support. Good Doctor Strangelove reference right there. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible. And thank you so much once again. We're on to the next one, which is from Jordan Walters, which says, I ain't stupid, but I like civil engineering. And hey, who doesn't like civil engineering? I think it's incredibly cool, right? You know, like, I'm not stupid either, but I like it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $2 super chat from Jordan Walters again. Jordan Walters said, Joe Rogan lawsuit thoughts? Jesus returns. And I don't know about the last part, but the Joe Rogan lawsuit thing, I actually have no knowledge about that. I wouldn't even be able to talk about that. I have to declare ignorance on that at the moment, because I don't know anything about it. But still, big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to our final super chat of the night, which is a $2 super chat from Elka Sir. And Elka said, perhaps another rail issue is the Panama Canal. And that actually is a interesting point. The Panama Canal is kind of drying up at the moment. They're not getting the kind of rains that they need in Lake Gatun and, let's see, the other nearby lake. Where the hell is that lake? This is Lake Gatun, and I believe it's this one, Lake Alajuela. Yeah, it's Lake Alajuela, which also feeds into the Lake Gatun area as well for the canal. Yeah, they do need help with that, because, interestingly enough, they are starting to run into some interesting issues down there with the lakes drying up and all. They can't really maintain it well enough, so they're having to try and figure out a way to get the cargo from the Pacific to the Atlantic without using a lot of water. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Pretty interesting idea. And with that, we are now moving on into the Morse code decoders of the stream, which is Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Banu, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. And the Morse code reads as follows. The Russians are not having a fun time in Kursk. They demand a refund. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And ding! And that is the sound of money. And y'all hit that down on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that Morse code message correct on the 904th day of war, because it is folks like you who have made that Morse code message readable for so long. So a big shout out to y'all. And with that, we are now on to the third to last question of the night, which goes to Plexus Gaming. And Plexus said, with the aircraft coming down in flames like it did, is it possible that it was shot down? Not so. Like, we would generally doubt that it was shot down. It was so deep in Russia that Mongolian air defense wouldn't have shot it down. Russian friendly fire air defense in this area probably doesn't exist, because there probably is no Russian air defense in this area either. It probably was a legitimate engine explosion that was so violent, it ended up leading the pilots to lose control of the aircraft, and then they ended up having to eject because of that. That's at least the running theory I'm going with right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Plexus. Great question, though. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night, which goes to Bruce Lee. Hello, is what he said. Oh, hello. Have you heard reports of Russian beheading Ukrainians in Kursk, and rumors that Ukraine may stop accepting POWs in response? I haven't at the moment. I don't even think there's enough Ukrainian prisoners being taken for that to be happening a lot. But if it is, we could maybe expect that the Ukrainians are not going to be so friendly to Russian prisoners, or they may not take them at all. But I haven't heard anything about that at the moment yet, so I'd have to declare ignorance on that at this moment. But with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night is Samantha Owen. And Samantha said, do you think Ukraine wants to take the Kursk nuclear power plant to trade for the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and the area? That is actually something, Samantha, that we've thrown around as an idea on this channel for a little bit. We said maybe the Ukrainians want to take the Kursk nuclear power plant so that way they have a direct comparable nuclear power plant to the Zaporizhzhia one that's being controlled by the Russians. Maybe that would be what they're looking for in the future. I'm kind of doubting that, at least on the short-term picture, but in the long-term picture, we may see that that's the exact par-on-par trade that the Ukrainians make with the Russians, is to get their nuclear power plant back, and the Russians get their own nuclear power plant back in return. That may be a fairly decent idea. That's one I would believe is not out of the question at all. It's a high likelihood that that may be one of the things the Ukrainians are going for. And so with that, I hope I addressed that question fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every one of y'all so much once again for watching. It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to run this channel, to run the stream for all of y'all tonight. The 13.5 thousand of y'all who were here at the peak, and about the 110,000 people who have watched so far. I got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching, and if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We run this stream every single day of the week except for Monday, 6 days a week, starting at the exact same time every night, and covering the news in the detail we had, and answering as many questions as we did tonight. And also, if y'all would like, hit that like button. We've gotten up to 4,500 likes so far. It would be wonderful if we could see even more than that. But still, big thanks to y'all once again for watching. And I will see y'all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Spring on his shores.